Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. We got an amazing guest today. We got Jared Yellin. Jared Yellin, he is the co-founder of an amazing company with Grant Cardone called 10X Incubator. He's a serial entrepreneur, a highly successful one at that, a speaker, and so many other things. So I'd like to get to know Jared. Welcome, Jared. How are you, sir?
Awesome, Tony, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I know we're going to go really deep here, and I'm giving you permission. Nothing's off limits. So you can ask me anything. I want to create immense value for your community. I stand for what you stand for. I love what you're doing here. I love the depth versus width, which I think really needs to happen in the space of podcasting, where you really go deep with people so that people can understand like how did they actually get to where they are versus them just speaking about where they are. So yeah, I'm an open book, my friend. Ask me anything.
All right. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. So, Jared, just to get started, can we start out with like a quick 30-second snapshot, if you want to just tell everybody about yourself, and then we're going to get into your story right after.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of the tech ecosystem called Project 10K. And Project 10K is committed to building, scaling, and selling 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. We also are about to launch Project 10K Capital, which is our debt and financing arm, along with Project 10K Hub, which is our licensing arm. We're opening up 1,000 tech hubs in 1,000 tier 3, 4, and 5 cities around the world. Those are physical locations. And the reason we're doing this is to democratize technology and to decentralize technology. Democratize means we give everybody a seat at the table, regardless of gender, skin color, socioeconomic background, educational background, financial status, which there is not a seat at the table for everybody right now, but we have a seat at the table. And decentralized means you can be anywhere and become a tech founder. That means you don't need to pick up your entire life and move to Silicon Valley or move to New York or move to Miami. You can live in the small town in Kansas that you want to live in. You can be a successful tech founder as well. So that's what we're doing in the world.
That's incredible. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. Jared, I'm so excited to get to know you and your story as well. So, Jared, let's take it back. Let's take it way back. Where are you originally from, Jared?
North New Jersey. So I grew up in Bergen County. My parents got divorced when I was very young. It was the turning point of my life. Really, everything that I've achieved is because of their divorce. Divorce for me was a gift. I was young and immersed myself in that painful experience to try to just understand why. And I learned a lot about myself, about my parents, and it just set me up for everything that I'm doing today. I'll speak into it more as we go, but many people have life events like that, and you got to make a decision, right? It's either happening for you or it's happening to you. And at like a really young age, I committed to this happening for me so that it wouldn't become an anchor in my life.
Well, what age were they divorced?
I was 6. My sister was 4. They were separated. I don't know why it took them like forever to get divorced, but yeah, I was 6 when the separation took place. It was, if somebody were to ask me to define my childhood in one word, I would have said it was loud. Like there was just nowhere to go for peace. And I'm sure there was worse divorces than theirs. It was just pretty darn grueling, from like an economic roller coaster to restraining orders to hate, and like they did everything you could be wrong within the space of the divorce. They're great individual people. They're just not great together. And it was rather tumultuous, but it definitely got me to just like, I went to personal development at such a young age. I started reading motivational quotes. Like I remember back to like younger than 10, like reading quotes. And I don't even know why that was where I went to, but I went there. And then I think I was like 12 or 13 and I read Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And that's just what I gravitated to. And I became fascinated with whatever would give me the edge. And one of the things that the piece of that was personal development, but a huge piece of that was my health. And I begged my parents to let me work out, like begged them. And back in the day, you were told if you worked out too soon, it would stunt your growth. I don't know why that was the old wives' tale that was shared. So my dad was like, well, you can do pull-ups and you can do push-ups and you can do the rowing machine. And I did every single day. And when I got to high school, I was begging my dad, I'm like, I got to get into the gym. Like I have to get into the gym. And finally gave me that chance. And it was also one of those turning points in my life. The gym gave me work ethic. I became a natural bodybuilder. I never competed. It wasn't for that purpose. It was really just for my own self-discipline and my own internal drive as well. And I did that when I was in college. And what was interesting is no one knew what I looked like, because I'd go to the gym and I'd always be wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants. They had no idea that I was looked the way I looked or had a strength that I had, but then they would know when I actually would deploy it. And I used to incline bench press over 400 pounds.
Wow.
And the rule in the gym was if you had more than 2 plates, I had 4 plates. You had to have a spotter. Like you weren't allowed to do it otherwise. And I get it. It's not the safest thing in the world. So I would intentionally go and try to find either the smallest dude or like a young lady to spot me. And they'd be like, I can't help you. I'm like, that's exactly why I'm asking you to spot me. Because I have no other way but to get this weight off my chest. But what happened was interesting. So I got a lot of attention because the weight was very heavy. I was big, but I really knew what I was doing. Like my diet, meticulous, my regimen, meticulous, like immersed in personal development. So my professors at the business school would often come to me and be like, can you give me advice? And I was giving them advice. And one day it hit me. I'm like, you know what? You're never going to take this advice unless you pay for it. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're going to start paying me for the information that I provide you. And you're going to meet me in the gym at 4:00 in the morning. And we're going to train together. But in addition, you know where I'm going in life. And you know that I'm not the guy that's going to sit in the classroom. So in exchange for what I'm going to do, which is going to transform your world, you're just going to tell me what I need to know to pass the exam, or you're just going to let me pass the exam because I don't want to sit in the classroom. That's just not who I am. I have incredible entrepreneurial drive. And that's literally how I got to college. So I trained them in the mornings. I got to know them because most of them were successful business people that were now professors. I never went to class, not out of lack of work ethic, out of it not being a good use of time. I never took one final ever an exam, ever. And I graduated from college. But it was all because of just using human ingenuity, which is one of the things that I speak into often with what we're doing today.
Wow, that's incredible. Jared, I'm going to come back to that, the exercise part, the fitness part in just a moment, because yeah, I think that's super cool. I want to step back for a moment, go back to, pre 6 years old, before your parents got divorced. What was life growing up like that? Maybe just a minute or two, if you can just give us 1 or 2 examples of that time frame, because I think this is important, because if we can highlight, you said it's one of the most important, impactful times of your life. I want to see trying to find the details of where that transition actually clicked to start you on your journey.
It's interesting because when I think about my parents' marriage, even to this day, it was like the ultimate love affair, like deep love, passion, commitment to one another. It was a really like a great example of love. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, the light switch was turned off. Like out of nowhere. I remember the day they told me, I remember sitting on the couch with my sister and they said, we're separating. And like, it made literally no sense to me, Tony. I'm like, what? Like they were like the example of love. Like they were so committed to each other. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, how could you be separating? It was as if somebody like walked into a room, you weren't expecting, they shut the lights off and you're like, wait, where am I? Like, you don't know where you are. So I say it was a turning point for me because what it did was it made me recognize that time is the only thing that matters in life. Like the only thing. Like money doesn't matter, time matters. Like you can always go out and make more money, but you can never go out and get more time. So it's one of the reasons why, and my whole life, I am fanatical about where I put my time because I don't know when that light switch, that proverbial light switch is going to be turned off in what, not just like my life, like health, relationships, like I just don't know, business. So I am fanatical about every single second. And we're going to get into this because once I start sharing what we're actually doing today, you'll see how my parents' divorce and the light switch being shut off is why I'm uniquely qualified to do what I'm doing today, which is overly ambitious. Most people would say is impossible, but I know it's probable and we're already doing it. But it's that light switch, like out of nowhere, it just got dark and I'm like, crap, I got to take time really seriously.
And Jared, I'm a big fan of what you're doing. I think it's incredible. I'm also a technology guy. I just want to step back. What was the connection between time and that divorce though? How did you realize that time was important from the divorce there? Was it that you were realizing that you've invested 6 years of your life and nothing's guaranteed in life, right?
That's what it was. Yeah. It was like out of nowhere. It's like anything can change when somebody shuts the lights off. So then I want to make sure that until that happens, I just fully optimize the experience. Like if I knew that my parents, I was really young, but like if I knew that my parents' love affair was going to last for 6 years and I knew that the day that I was born, what else would I have done over those 6 years to like fully embrace and enjoy that experience? Like, what other lessons could I have learned? What other things could I have done? But since everybody believes that like time is forever, but it's just not, they tend to take things for granted. So because of that event, like I remember distinctly sitting on the couch in the living room when it happened, and I was like, holy crap. And I'm like 6, like I was very introspective 6-year-old. Like, I'm like, holy crap. Like, that is literally wild. That like out of nowhere, I'm like, what else could I have done if I experienced? I don't know if I was thinking all of that then because I was 6, but now looking back, I'm like, if I only knew, like, if you knew the day that you were going to die, what would you do during your life? Like, what would you do that you aren't currently doing because you think you have all the time in the world to do those things? And then all of a sudden the light switch goes off and it's done. Like, if you knew that at a certain point in time, a relationship with a child was going to turn and that child was not going to be as involved in your life, what would you have done during the time when you had that child fully engaged in your life? It just made me like assess everything that I do, create ridiculous boundaries and non-negotiables. It didn't all happen when I was 6, but I've done a lot of introspection since then, which has allowed me to get that way today in my life.
Jared, what do you think? Let's flip the table. What do you think about those people who spend their entire lives together and they know that they shouldn't have been a great fit from like early on, but they still didn't have the courage to separate? They just continued and they lived miserable existences up until their death because they never just took the chance and wanted to use their time better doing something else better in life.
I remember like years ago, I told my mom I want to create a documentary where I go around the world and I interview people like that, and just couples that have been together for a very long time. And I asked them, if you knew what you know today, would you have said I do? Because I'm really curious, like how many people stay in relationships out of the fear of being alone, out of their just own insecurities, out of the fact that they've been conditioned, maybe religiously even speaking, like that you just don't get divorced. So I believe divorce is a gift. I don't believe the way my parents did it was a gift for me. I think it was way more tumultuous than it needed to be because we were like, at least my sister wasn't as much. I was so in it, like, and part of it is I was really introspective. Like I was like, I took nothing at face value. Like I had to understand the why of everything. Like I just wanted to get it. Like I remember when my parents had a restraining order, how involved I was with that. And I was probably like 6.5 at that time. Like that's unnecessary but it was partially me. Like I like put myself in it because I wanted to understand the dynamics of what's happening. But I do believe that divorce is a gift when done the right way. I really do. I think that having children grow up in a home that doesn't experience like real love, like meaningful love, sets a model for them. And then as a result, that's what they believe love is. And that's really sad because there's nothing more profound than love. Like that dynamic between two people is just catalytic. And for a child to see that is everything. Because then that's their baseline. Like that's the baseline of love for them. Doesn't mean they're going to have it, but they have that baseline. And if they don't compromise, that's their baseline. But if their baseline is down here, then like that's potentially where all they're going to ever experience, or maybe less than that because they compromise. But I think the same thing is for parents going after ambitious goals. Like I think the same thing for that. Like if a child sees a parent taking it and playing it safe, like they're just traveling status quo, they're doing things that are predictable, that's their baseline. So I believe everybody should push themselves beyond limits. They should go after things that are big, bold, and audacious, including their love affair. Their relationship should be big and bold and ambitious and public, and so that it sets a baseline for the child where they're like, wow, like that's what love is, or that's what success is, or that's what health is. And I believe that's the responsibility of a parent, is to create baselines for your children to then go and use that either to propel forward or to make their own decisions.
That's beautiful, Jared. And there's a lot of different ways to interpret a situation like yours. And you took the right path, and you took it as a catalyst to understand how, when you get older, to not make that happen and what you wanted to do in life. That's one way. That's one correct way. The other way is, another method is like, I believe Warren Buffett said it when they asked him, what was your characteristic that really made you success? He goes, I grew up, I was loved. So there's the opposite approach too that can also take you to success if you come from a family that loves you. And the couple doesn't even have to necessarily be together. They can just love the child separately and give them enough love for them to fuel themselves into the future. But it's all about perspective, how you look at those experiences and look at love the correct way, would you say?
100%. Yeah. I think everything in life though is right. And I also like, so I have 2 young kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I have one on the way. And because of my childhood, like we just do it differently. Like really, like my 5-year-old is very similar to how I was, and my 3-year-old might get there as well. I think he will. Like, just she's really interested. Like, she's very introspective. She has lots of questions, and we give her a lot of information. Most of it probably doesn't make any sense, but I do believe through osmosis, it's affecting her and helping her think differently. And we see it. Like, she's like this entrepreneurial 5-year-old. It's like amazing. Like, she's like trying to create things and cause things, and she's like very passionate about making money. And I love seeing that within her, and we cultivate it out of her. Listen, we're far from perfect, because no one is, but we do try to cultivate this within our own kids. And I would encourage parents to do that in a very intentional way. Like, if you didn't have it, then do everything that you didn't have. Like don't let what you were given to be what your child is going to be given. Like, create a new foundation. Like, I could absolutely go and recreate like exactly what my father and mother did, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd have exactly what my father and mother had. Or I can say, I'm going to just completely oppose that, and I'm going to go after what I ultimately believe is right. So that's what I chose to do. And then I would encourage like parents at scale to do that as well. Like, create baselines for your children, then ultimately create independent children. Because I talk about this in the space of what we're doing, because we build, scale, and sell tech companies. We have co-founders at scale. And what we talk about is how critical it is to remove all dependencies, because dependencies equal death. So I believe that children that are dependent on their parents, that's not a positive thing. Like, we should all want to grow independent, thriving children that want us, they don't need us. Well, the same holds true for us in entrepreneurship, because I want our co-founders to want us, but not need us. Because the more they need us, the less we can scale and create impact. So these are just like principles that like apply to us as parents, us in our intimate relationships, us as entrepreneurs. These are just like universal laws that exist, but they should be integrated through all aspects of life so that you can benefit from those laws.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. So Jared, moving on into your youth, what would you say would classify your early teens, from like 10 on? Like, what were you taking a lot of jobs? Did you have that entrepreneurial qualities of, paper boy, bus boy, all that kind of stuff? What were you doing at that time?
Yeah, I was always entrepreneurial. I launched like a newspaper, kind of like a magazine for the entire school, but not through the school, like independently of the school, and then sold it to literally every person in the entire student body, like door to door, like student to student on the playground. No one said no, because I wouldn't let them say no. And I actually got in trouble for doing it because it wasn't done through the school. I'm like, how are you punishing me for doing what you ultimately are going to want me to do in life? But a great story. This is a little bit past the point of 10 to 13. But when I was in high school, I was in an honors English program. And I was not that kind of student though, at all. I was just naturally smart. And the teacher's name was Miss Haid, which there's no coincidence that was her name. She truly was the devil. But she actually accused me of plagiarism, which is a really serious offense, like to be accused of plagiarism. And it led to like this investigation on this thing that I wrote. And listen, that was a very long time ago, so I have nothing to hide now. I did not plagiarize whatsoever. But regardless of that, my parents had to get involved. That the head of the English department was involved. The principal. It was like a huge deal. So we're sitting in this room where like it was like the deep investigation. And my dad said, just before we go any further, why are you even accusing him of this? Like, what makes you believe that he plagiarized? And she looked me in the eyes, not my father. And she said, because Jared's not a good writer, and that work is too good to be his own. And I remember that moment. It was like one of those moments where I could say it's happening for me or to me. I'm like, listen, watch me now. And I'm not joking. I have published thousands of articles since then. Like I am an extraordinary direct response marketing copywriter. I used to get hired to do this. I made millions of dollars doing this. She's never published one thing in her entire life. Her biggest claim to fame was that she was an honors English professor. Like that's like her biggest claim to fame. Another one of those life events, right? It can serve you or it can just bring you down. So, but I mean, I was a rebel. I just like, part of why she felt the way she felt was I shouldn't have been in that classroom, like not out of intellect, out of the fact that I'm just not interested in learning that way. Like I probably could have avoided all public education and college, and I'd be where I am. Like there was nothing, that just wasn't who I am. So, but I was always thinking outside the box. I don't want to say hustling, because I don't believe that's what's required to be successful, but selling things, innovating things, but ultimately helping a lot of people. Like I was very popular because I was a great athlete, but I would always befriend the person who wasn't. Like always. Like I've wanted to create an even playing field my whole life, like based on anything that I've done.
Jared, I want to pause that one particular moment with your teacher, because I think that's so funny. It's a lesson for everyone out there. So folks, never tell someone they can't do something, because this is what can happen, folks. 20, 30 years, 50 years later, someone can show up on a show or a podcast and put them in perspective and be like, oh, you remember that time? Well, yeah, I wrote thousands of articles, and you really went full circle and put them in perspective. So yeah, I mean, that's super cool. And you didn't let anyone really tell you what you can do, what your possibilities are. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. And listen, like it's why I believe that one of the most fundamental needs for everybody is that they do door-to-door sales at points. Like, I think that's such a critical skill set, even if you're never going to sell beyond that point. But like learning how to embrace rejection, learning how to be denied, learning how to be told that you're not good enough, fast enough, smart, like understanding how to become thick-skinned. Because I don't believe like you're born with that. Like you just make a choice. Like you make a choice as to whether or not the opinions of others are going to hold you back or propel you forward. And if more people were able to consciously recognize that that happened for them, not to them, and allowed it to be what propelled them forward, and it became a catalyst for them, like versus the thing that holds them back for the rest of their life. Like how many adults still hear that little voice inside from their teacher, their friend, like, they're like, you're not good enough. Like you're not good enough. A year before I married, before I started dating my wife, I went, my date before I met Lindsay was with this woman, a girl, I guess you could say. And we went on this date. And I remember while we're sitting there having dinner, she said something to me around the fact of no one cares about what I have to say. And it just went on like that was normal. And I'm like, can you just go back to that for a moment? I'm like, why did you say that? That's such a bold statement that no one cares about what you have to say. Like, where did that start? She's like, well, like at work, like I have opinions and like, no one really cares what I have to say. I'm like, it didn't start at work though. Like when did that happen? She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, let me create a scenario for you, if you don't mind. I said, was there ever a point in time that you were on the playground, like the little version of you, the 6 or 7 version of you, and you were playing with a friend, and you called their name and they didn't respond, they ran the other direction, and in that moment you decided that no one cares about what you have to say, and you saw her actually like start sweating. She got so uncomfortable. I'm like, tell me what shows up for you. She goes, that kind of happened. I'm like, well, tell me, how old were you? She goes, I was 8 years old, and I was playing with my cousin on the playground, and I called her name, and she left. And like, I just never realized that really impacted me. I'm like, do you know where she went? And she goes, where? I'm like, her mom also called her name. And her mom said, hey, Mary, it's dinner time. And she just ran to her mom. And for the past 20 years, you've held on to this story of no one cares what you have to say, because you expanded upon reality to create something that was an augmented reality that became your truth. I'm like, can you imagine right now if you now live the actual reality versus your augmented reality? Like, what would that do for you? So that was our last first date. That's heavy first date for anybody. But she then emailed me actually like years later, and she goes, that conversation changed my entire life. And I'm not saying this to boast, because I don't, that's like not the purpose of this at all. But there's so many of these like life experiences that happen that our impression of the experience is what literally holds us back, or our impression is what drives us forward. So when Miss Haid said to me, you're not a good writer, what I actually heard her say was, I'm going to challenge you to be even better. And I'm like, all right, I accept the challenge. Let's do it. And then as a result, I got better. So I owe it. I'm like, thank you, Miss Haid, for saying that to me when I was 16, 17 years old, because now 20 years later, like I'm in Forbes, like I'm in Entrepreneur Magazine. Like I published like literally thousands of articles. Like that's part of what I've done to get to where I am. And I give her all the credit for it, because she challenged me to get better that day when she said the writing was good to be my own.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way to look at it. You're right. A lot of the people that have done what could typically be misconstrued as horrible things to us or said horrible things to us are actually the catalysts which have helped improve us the most. So yeah, Jared, excellent commentary on that. And I'd like to move into a little bit more about your education. You want to go into college, or did you complete college?
I went to Indiana University. I was in the business school. The only reason I went there was they had rolling admission and there was no like application. So it wasn't, I never had a poor work ethic. I had an extreme work ethic, just not for education. I love learning. I just don't love education. So, but I went to Indiana University. I was in the business school. It happened to be a top business school. I graduated early just because I had a ferocious desire to get out of the classroom. I didn't really go to class, but once again, not because I was doing inappropriate things. I was in the gym for 3 hours a day, training my body. And then I was training my professor. So that was my college. And I would learn what I needed to learn in the actual gym. And what I would learn was the actual stuff that mattered in business, not what they were teaching you out of a textbook. So I would say I gained a lot of wisdom there. And then I graduated early. I moved to downtown Chicago, where I started my first company. It was a reverse mortgage company. I didn't even know what that was at the time, Tony. I literally had no clue, but my partner did. He graduated a few years earlier than me and was working at McKinsey Consulting. And he was part of a pretty large group, and he's very, very smart. And his managing partner of the group came to him and said, I have this idea. I think you're the right person to do it, but you have to quit here. And he painted this vision of doing reverse mortgages online, which at the time was beyond novel. Like no one was doing it. But his thesis was, if we could do it online, we could do it way faster. But I don't know if that demographic is going to do it online, because the reverse mortgage, I mean, at the time, this was like a hot product, but it was for the 62 and older demographic when they were house rich and cash poor. And they could like live off of the equity in their home, but it wasn't a home equity line of credit. They would never have to pay it back. Once they passed on, the bank would just sell their home to get paid back and then give the remaining money to their heirs. So, but it was an older demographic, right? And it wasn't like today where that demographic is accustomed to doing things online. Like that was unheard of at the time. So he's like, well, the guy, his name is Darren, said, I think I can build a platform where people can actually do this, but I can't sell it. Like, that's just not my skill. He's more of an engineer. So the guy's like, all right, cool. I'll write you a pre-seed check for $500,000 to pay yourself really to build this, but you have to find someone to sell it. So he went to the business school in Indiana and said, do you have anybody that can sell? And I built a reputation for myself there that I could, because the summer before my last semester of college, because I graduated early, I did door-to-door sales in Manhattan and Brooklyn selling credit card processing. And besides for my parents' divorce, that was the single most pivotal experience of my entire life, because going door-to-door selling anything is really difficult. Like that is like a really hard thing to do, especially when your territory is Coney Island, which is like Brooklyn area. Like, so it's a 2-hour subway from Midtown Manhattan to Coney Island. And that was my territory. And I was selling credit card processing to small business owners. And this was one of those gigs where they hired literally everybody because no one made it. Like, it was, you eat what you kill. It was 100% commission. There's like almost no training. They just throw you out into the field. But I'm really competitive. And they told me that the way to win here was to see 100 doors every day. And if you see 100 doors a day, you'll get one sale. That was the law of averages. And it's like summer New York City, right? So it's really hot. It's like almost 100 degrees. And you had to wear a suit and tie going door to door, carry a briefcase. I'm on the subway for 4 hours a day to get to my territory. So that first week, I'm like, if they tell me to see 100, I'm seeing 150 businesses. I mean, I hustled so hard. I made a hole in my shoe. That's how much I was pushing. And that whole week, I saw 100, at least 150 every day. Probably so close to like almost 800 businesses over the course of the week. Literally zero sales, Tony. Not one person said yes. Wow. I had people throwing me out of their business. That's how like angry they were that I was walking in. And I remember that weekend I went home and I'm like, I'm the ultimate failure. Like, this is crazy. I couldn't get one person to say yes to me. Like, not one of them. Like,
credit card sales, right, Jared?
Merchant processing. Yeah. Like,
yeah, okay.
Changing their processor or selling them machines. I was 19 years old at the time. And so that Monday I went in, I'm like, if I get no sales today, I have to do something different. Cause I was paying my way through college. It's like, I had to make money in the summer. Like, there was no way to do this otherwise. So I go out into the field and I take the 2-hour subway ride to Coney Island, and I get there and it starts to pour. And the one rule was, if it rained, you had to come back to the office. You couldn't stay out in the field, but it was raining too hard for me to go back to the office. It was literally pouring. So I run into this local cupcake shop. I'm soaking wet. I feel like a wet loser now. I'm like, this is utterly absurd. Like I saw 800 businesses. This was my one day to see if I can make it or break it. And I'm sitting in the chair and the gentleman behind the counter said, what's wrong? Because he could like see that I was like visibly just really dissatisfied. And for the first time, I broke script. For the first time. And I just became a human. I had a conversation with him. And he said, it's so funny that you're here right now. I opened this cupcake shop 1 week ago. And I told my wife this morning, I said, I'm going to call a merchant processor because I need credit card processing. And now you're here. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So he ended up doing it for everything, the machine, the processing. I made $300, which felt like $300 million. I went back on the subway to the office because it was still raining. When you get a sale, you can hit a gong. And if you got a full boat, which is what I had, like the machine and the processing, you can hit it twice. I freaking broke the gong. I was so excited. And what happened though, is I realized this critical lesson. And the critical lesson was how important it is to build rapport. And the next day when I went in, I said to the head of the office, I said, what do you care about more, the 100 doors or the one sale? And she's like, obviously the one sale. I'm like, all right, cool. So I started seeing 10 businesses a day because there was no way to build rapport with 100 businesses in 8 hours. It was impossible going door to door. Like you're sprinting door to door to just see these doors. So I just built rapport. I was completely off script. I wanted to understand more about these businesses. I'd want to understand about their past, their present, and their vision for the future. And that was what I wanted to conquer. And if I had that information, I knew that I could influence the outcome as long as they were better off with me than without me. And I started getting 4 sales literally every day. I became the #1 person in the whole country selling credit card processing. And this was like an internship. It was like my last summer before college. They started having me teach this for the organization. And I opened up an office in Tampa doing the same thing in Tampa, Florida. It was remarkable the summer, but I built this reputation for myself that this dude can freaking sell. And the university knew it. So when Darren, who's an engineer, had $500,000 and was told you can't spend $1 of this until you find someone that can sell what you're going to build in the space of reverse mortgages, the school connected us. It sounded really interesting, although I didn't even know what reverse mortgages were. And that was my first gig out of college. We co-founded the company. We had literally a closet in downtown Chicago, 205 West Randolph Street. It was such a small little office, literally the two of us, like my back was touching his back. And in about a year, we scaled from that to 35 employees. We completely proved out the model, which was really cool. We cash flowed it. We ended up getting another round of investment to scale further. I sold my equity at that point, mainly because for me, this wasn't like that exciting. It was exciting to get it to that point. Like the 0 to 1 was exciting. The 1 to whatever it was going to become was way less exciting. I wasn't overly passionate about the industry, but it was such an incredible learning experience. Literally 2 dudes sitting in a closet in Chicago with this idea that was completely unvalidated and had more chances of failing than succeeding because we were going to use the internet to streamline the reverse mortgage process for mature adults. And we figured it out because we learned that we had to market to the child of the mature adult to actually do the documents for them. And they loved the fact they could do it online for faster and cheaper. So we really cracked the code in the industry. I sold out at a good time because right after that was the whole subprime mortgage mess, which kind of like annihilated the industry of reverse mortgages. But that was like I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial, but that was like a real like all-in startup, and we did it. It was an incredible opportunity.
Jared, if you don't mind, I just like to critique this moment. I see what you just did, and it's brilliant. So this is a great lesson on how to do business. I mean, you really broke the model there, and what you figured out was that relationships, when you reduce the quantity, it didn't matter. You were looking at seeing 100 people, you see only 10, and that's a great goal, by the way. I mean, if you really only saw 4 or 5 in one day, and they all were good conversations, you did your job that day. You figured out that this was the actual formula. And right now, I just connected with a guy named Bob Bodine. I thank Tom Schnall for that. He'll be on the podcast pretty soon. He wrote a book called The Power of Who, and he forced me to read it in order to be on the show, so I'm reading it. But Bob is a master connector. I mean, he's got on his book, he's got endorsements from people like the NFL commissioner, et cetera. I mean, he's friends with everybody in the sports industry. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make was that you discovered this relationship significance of building relationships with people, getting to know people in order to really truly make sales, to truly connecting. And I want to connect this moment, excuse the pun, to when you were a child. You actually learned what not to do in a relationship through your parents. and you took that experience and then figured out what to do when you put the whole model together. And that's what made you a great salesman. And we're going to talk about your relationship with Grant Cardone a little bit. Grant Cardone, in my opinion, is one of the top marketers out there in this world. And you found a way to, excuse the pun, sell him on that idea. I mean, you are a master salesman. And what this key concept is built around actually trying to help others do what they want to do in life, accomplish their goals. Something Dale Carnegie said in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. You took that main theme and applied it to your life. Would you agree with everything I said, or any thoughts on that?
100%. And like what I would say, even more than being a master salesperson, I'm a master at gaining leverage, and I never take advantage of leverage ever. So I have a rule, because I know that I can influence anyone to do anything at any time. If they're not better off with me than without me, I will not leverage what I have in order to produce the outcome. I have to know that I'm going to bring them to a better place than where they are right now. And that's like a moral obligation I have, because I know this is like a superhuman power. So you can use that for good or you can use it for bad, right? So I'm very intentional about it. But when I know that someone's better off with me than without me, they have no chance of saying no. And we'll speak about Grant in a bit. I had leverage over Grant, which is the reason why Grant said, I want to work with you. And that might sound crazy. How do you get leverage over Grant? The way you get leverage over anyone is you have to ask specific questions. And if you don't ask those questions, then I believe you're not influencing, you're manipulating, because you don't have enough data to know whether or not you can help them in the first place. And the 3 questions that I learned as a result of going door to door was I had to uncover their past, their present, and their future. And if I had their past, present, and future, I had everything I needed in order to determine if I could make their future our present. And if I can make their future our present, there was no chance they were saying no. So the way I got there was I'd ask them questions like, what are you most proud of? What are you most excited about? What's your vision for the future? Like, proud is past, excited is present, and then vision for the future is their future. When you have that information, you just have to use it the right way. Like, because that's everything you need. Like, that's it. Those are the 3 golden questions. And then it comes down to, is your offer going to make their vision for the future something they can experience in the presence with you? And if yes, then sell them on it. Like, and it's not even a sales pitch anymore. It's an invitation to say yes to taking what they thought was going to be in their future and having it start today.
That's brilliant, Jared. And Jared, before we continue the story, just real quick, want to add to that because you brought an important point. Someone who's a master influencer, okay? Not everyone has a good ethical compass. You do. That's a great thing. What about the people who are master influencers that are driving the direction of other people in the direction that's good for them and not for the other person? And like that, what's your thoughts on the unethical influencer?
So no one has ever died, and at their funeral, like, people were like, I can't believe they got away with a scheme for 100 years. Like, that's never happened before, right? They always get caught. Like, the truth will always prevail. The unfortunate part is that on the journey to the truth, there are people that are getting hurt, which is very unfortunate. But for those that are watching this that manipulate more than influence, you're going to get caught. Like, that's it. And then it comes down to like what matters in your life. Like, so for me, like I have kids now, like, and a beautiful wife, and I have this great life. Like, I have so much to freaking lose. Like, I would never deploy it the wrong way. Because if I were to go to bed one night and I thought to myself that my son or my daughter or my future son, because we have a baby on the way, looks at me and they're not proud of me.
Congratulations, boy.
Oh, thank you. Like, I completely failed. So for those watching this, that you call yourself master influencers, but you're actually masters of manipulation, you're going to get caught. And then it comes down to, is it even worth it? Because the skill that you have to manipulate, when used the right way, will actually influence positive outcomes, and then just make better choices as to when you deploy it. And the reason I believe most people that are going to go down the path of manipulation is because they don't have enough abundance. And as a result of having not enough abundance, they feel like desperate. And that might feel odd because a lot of the people that do the most significant manipulations in the world, they have a lot of money, but they don't feel like they have a lot of money. They don't feel like there's abundance. So for me, there's so much abundance. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I have everything I want, but I want more at the same time, but I still have everything that I want. So as a result, I only deploy it because I want everybody else to get everything they want as well. But yeah, listen, anybody that's manipulating, we're coming for you. Like, we're coming, not me. Like, we're coming, the universe is coming for you. There's no way you're going to make it to the grave. And that's when people are going to realize that you manipulated them. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. There's a gentleman recently that I kind of got pseudo involved with, and he's a master manipulator. This guy, this like masters a couple of years ago, and he's a class action lawsuit against him. He has young kids; they're never going to see him again. He's going to go to jail, like not because of me, like this whole group of people that were manipulated found each other, and they came together, and they're taking him down. And what an unfortunate thing. He's incredibly skilled at what he does, like incredibly skilled. And he's going to go to jail probably for decades. Like he really took advantage of people. And he's never going to see his kids. Like he has kids that are under 10. Like he's going to be in jail for 30 to 40 years. Like by the time that he's out of jail, his kids are no longer kids. Like come down. Like, is it worth it? Like, is it truly worth it? Because it will always end that way. I believe it will always end that way because the universe will conspire for the right people to win and for the wrong people to lose.
That is brilliant, Jared. That is brilliant. I love it. And just to follow through one thought on that. I mean, take that one step further. The reason this is happening is because you'll lose trust by doing even one major thing wrong. You're going to lose trust, and that trust could have took a lifetime to build. But once trust is gone, what happens, Jared? Once trust is gone, what happens?
It's over. Like it's over. Like I actually believe that, and I had this conversation with Grant too. The way I operate is everybody starts with 100% trust with me. You don't have to earn trust with me. All you can do is lose it. Again, when it's lost, there's no way to regain it. And I think most people are that way. Even the ones that are like, no, you have to earn my trust. I don't really think that's what they mean. I think it's like they actually trust them because why wouldn't they? And then all you can do is lose it. But once it's lost, it's never regained again. Like think about like an intimate couple where one person cheats on the other person, but they decide to stay married still. The trust is never going to go back to integrity. It's impossible. The residual will always be present. If one time, like the person that cheated is like, didn't respond to a phone call in a timely manner, that person's default is they're cheating on me again. Like there's no way to, in my opinion, to fix a trust issue. So the key is just to do the right thing from the start. So it's never actually an issue in the first place.
And if you had to quantify it, let's say 100% is maximum trust, right? I think what you're trying to say is you can never reach maximum trust 100% again. You might be able to do things because people do change. They can get back to maybe 80 or 90 or even 95%, even 99%. There's always going to be a small percent left for the possibility that this person's flawed. They already made this mistake before. So I got to reserve a little bit of possibility of anything happening there, right?
And listen, you bring up a good point because like we're humans, right? We're going to make mistakes, but there's a difference between mistake and violating trust, right? Like intent is a really like meaningful thing. So I talk often about how, like, I'll use myself as an example, like what we're doing at Project 10K will unquestionably impact billions of lives. And the more we get into it, you'll see why I make that statement. And I know that on the journey to impact billions of lives, I'm going to ruffle the feathers of a few thousand people. I'm not doing it intentionally. It's just inevitable. Like it's just going to happen. And the reason why I believe most people don't look to impact billions of lives is because they're too concerned about ruffling a few thousand feathers. So they're focused more on not ruffling the feathers versus serving the billions. I've had this conversation with Grant and many other people like Grant as well, that are going after really big, ambitious outcomes where they're like, I want the world to know my name, not out of ego, but if they know my name, they know my work. If they know my work is going to change their life, or I'm looking to solve hunger issues in countries that have major, like they're doing big, big things. The only way they're going to get there is not by pushing anybody else down. Like that's not the way you get to the top. By pushing others down, you get to the top, but you're definitely going to move people aside. And the people that you're going to move aside are not going to be raving fans. They're probably going to think that you're not the greatest human alive. But if the intent is right, and that's something that you have to dig into, like to be honest with yourself, is my intent right? And if the intent is right, you got to do whatever it takes to produce that outcome.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Jared. All right, Jared. So I'd like to continue your story for just a few more moments. Then we're going to get into our questions. We got some deep questions that will actually pick up on your story at certain points. Like for example, we're going to get into the 10X Incubator, Grant Cardone a little bit. We're going to talk about marketing and things like that. So at a certain point, you left, you graduated, you already proved your sales worthiness. You know how to sell. You're post college. From that point to the point where you met Grant Cardone, you want to just give us a quick summary, and also I'd love to hear how that story happened, the meeting with Grant and whatnot. So
I sold my equity for the reverse mortgage company. I moved back to the East Coast. My family was in the East Coast. So I was living in Chicago for the reverse mortgage company, and I was very young because I graduated college early, so I was maybe 21 years old. And I remember thinking to myself, if I'm ever going to try this corporate thing, it would be now. Like, I should maybe just give this thing a shot. Like maybe I will like it. Maybe I'll be a high performer inside of a company versus you only eat what you kill kind of situation. So I figured, let me see if I can get a gig on Wall Street. So I did, and I lasted about 6 months. And then my quote unquote mentor said to me, you really should start combing your hair this way, because if you comb your hair this way, you'll look a little bit more mature. I'm like, I don't want to look more mature. I want to look exactly the way I want to look. And furthermore, I'm not going to come in tomorrow. And he's like, are you serious? And I was like, actually doing really well. Like I raised $25 million for this team in like 6 months. And I knew nothing about investing. I knew nothing about anything to do with finance. I just knew how to connect with people. And then I brought them into the office and they started making investments with people that actually knew what they were doing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not coming back. And he goes, why? I'm like, because if that's what it takes to be here, I'm just not the right guy. And I'd rather know now than know years from now, because years from now, it's an identity crisis. Right now, it was a learning experience. So I'm good. And that was it. I've been an entrepreneur ever since. So I've had a pretty good run over almost 17 years now of being an entrepreneur. I've also had some beautiful learning experiences as well. I'm what you call a non-technical tech founder. So what that means is there's not an engineering bone in my entire body. I know how to write marketing copy and I know how to sell. About 11 years ago, I launched a company called SYNDUIT. And the vision for SYNDUIT was to build what I called the simplest marketing software in the world, and then pre-populate it with content across every major industry, turn it into a SaaS platform, which is a software as a service, like a subscription, and then sell it to small business owners. And this was like genius. I'm like, this is all, there was nothing like this, Tony, at the time. Like this was in a complete league of its own in the space of tech. I just didn't know where to start. Remember, I'm a non-technical tech founder. I had the money to do it, but I felt almost like irresponsible throwing cash at like such an elusive concept. So I figured, let me buy a little bit of time so I can get a little more clarity and I'll start selling my skill. So I did. I sold myself as a direct response marketing copywriter. I got 2 pretty high profile clients to give me a shot. And we did a performance deal. So it was very easy to make a decision. It was a yes or a yes for them. I said, I'll only get paid on what I produce. I want 30% of top line revenue that I produce, like new revenue that you wouldn't have if I wasn't here. And they said, we're all in, let's do it. So I produced. In the first 6 months of working with them, I made them $1 million a month. So I did well economically, and they did as well, but more in the money, they literally told everybody about me. And within probably 14, 15 months, we went from these 2 clients to almost 400 clients. It was literally insane, Tony. And we were running this digital agency for thought leaders, like authors, speakers, industry leaders. It was really exciting. We went from a team of like me to a big team, big office, extremely cash flow positive. But for me, a means to an end. I really wanted to launch this tech platform. And at the end of 2011, I had clarity of what that platform would do. So I started interviewing different software development firms all throughout the US, spoke to 12 of them. And I hired one in Boston that had a really strong track record. And they said to me, it's going to take 10 months and $750,000 to build the first version of the tech. And I didn't know any better. So I went all in and I completely funded it myself. I was probably about 26 at the time, 27, writing a check for $50,000 to $100,000 every month to cover the cost of the team. And we're now at the 10-month mark. So it's D-Day, which is demo day. And I told my girlfriend at the time, Lindsay, who's now my wife, our life changes today. I'm becoming a tech founder today. So I drove from North New Jersey to Boston, where their office was, and they invited me to this beautiful conference room. And we went into the conference room and they said, Jared, we have some good news for you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they just said some. I'm like, all right, well, show me what you got. So they started a demo. And the demo was literally amazing. Like it blew my mind. I got goosebumps. It was such a special experience. And then all of a sudden, after 2 minutes and 11 seconds, they shut it off. And I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Like, it's amazing. Like, why are you stopping? It's so good. And they're like, Jared, that's as far as we got. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's maybe 10% of the vision. They said, yeah, that's the problem. We miscalculated what it was going to take to finish. We need another 1.5 years and $1.5 million on top of what I've already put in, which is the 10 months and 750. And in that moment, Tommy, I became what you call a statistic. But unfortunately, that happens a lot to people like me, the non-tech tech founder that like doesn't know what they don't know. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, I was completely silent. I was like, everybody was like nervous, like, what is he going to do? And we were thinking to myself, I have the right to be ferociously angry or morbidly depressed. I have the right now. I completely can default to either, but for some reason, I feel grateful. And I feel grateful because once again, this is happening for me, not to me. And this is a chapter in my story called Jared's entrepreneurial journey. In addition, I said, okay, I'm making a commitment right now. And my commitment is that in my lifetime, I'm going to make the technology industry safe. I had no idea what I meant by that at the time, but I just felt called to do it. I also met somebody. So we had about 35 engineers on our team at that time. And that was through that firm that I hired in Boston. But one of them is a gentleman named Mani. And before Mani was working with me, Mani lived in India. And when he was in India, he started his own software development firm out of his parents' extremely small apartment. Like it's like a 300 square foot apartment. He's a picture of it that he showed me. And within 3 years, that company of one turned into 100 employees. Wow. And as great of an engineer as he is, he's a really good manager, mentor, and businessman. He sold that company at the end of 2011 to move to the US in 2012. And when he moved to the US, because he wanted to start a family here, he was living on the end of my street where my original office was in Englewood, New Jersey. So he could have been anywhere but there, and my entire story would be very different. But this was my office building. This was his apartment building. And in between, it was a 1/10 of a mile in between, was this little coffee shop that I've never been to before. And on one random Tuesday morning, I thought to myself, I'm going to get some coffee. So I go and walk over to the coffee shop. Another thing that I don't do is I don't small talk. So you could put me on a stage in front of 30,000 people with zero preparation and I can go the entire day and not be nervous at all. If I'm in an elevator with one other person, I'm looking down at my phone. Like I just don't small talk. Like I just don't know where to go with it. I don't know what kind of conversation we have. So now I'm in a coffee shop, which I've never been to. And for some reason, I'm like, I'm going to small talk with the person standing behind me, which happens to be Monty. And we just hit it off. And I'm like, when did you get here? He's like, I just got here a few days ago. I'm like, what are you doing for work? He's like, I don't know yet. I just got here a few days ago. I'm like, come on, walk over to my office. Like, I just want to show you what we're doing. So he walks over. He was like, this is really exciting. I'm like, I'm going to hire you on the spot. So he was my first in-house engineer, which was really cool. And we got to know each other. We built rapport. We built trust. And about 18 months later, I said, Monty, this software development firm is never going to pull this off. I want you to become my CTO. And I want to do this right. And that's what we did. We went out and we started building our own software development team. We hired in the US, we hired in Canada, and then we hired in India as well. We actually hired about a dozen people in India. When you're in tech, if you could figure out India, you're in great shape. It's just really hard to figure out India unless you have money, who hires his friends and his family. So it was wonderful. The only thing that was challenging is they were all contractors. And when you're a contractor in India, your income isn't recognized by banks. So as a result, you can't get personal loans for anything, houses or cars. So it's hard to retain the talent because eventually they want a house, they have to quit to get the house. So I'm like, we have to solve this. And we're putting so much energy and effort and investment into this team. We have to figure out a way to solve this. So I set up a company in 2017 in India that I own just to hire these 12 people. And when I did it, they were so excited, committed to me for life. And then I started questioning, why did I just do that? So expensive, so time consuming. I'm like, what do I need a company for in India? So I'm like, all right, let's start recruiting. So we did. And about 45 days later, the 12 people turned into 25 people. And that was my catalyst for SYNDUIT. So today, SYNDUIT has over 40,000 active paying users on the platform across 30 industries. It's a great company. We did exactly what we set out to do, which was to build the simplest marketing software in the world for small business owners. And we delivered on it. So it's been like this really remarkable journey. But the magic of the story and like the reason like we're having this conversation is we met on Clubhouse one night is because what happened 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I woke up one day and I realized I'm officially obsolete at SYNDUIT, which should be every entrepreneur's dream, right? That's like the dream. And I was really happy about it, but I'm like, what's my next chapter? Like what am I going to do now? I'm 35 at the time. I have 2 young kids. I'm happily married. We have a very nice life. I'm like, what's next? And all that I could think about was my commitment I made years earlier to make the technology industry safe. So I'm like, all right, that's what's next. So I'm going to declare that for me, my next chapter is my moonshot. I'm going to do something that shakes up the freaking world where I'm going to go down trying. And I started digging into that. I said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do exactly what I just did with SYNDUIT, but 10,000 more times by 2031. And I don't know why that was the number, because that's a ridiculous number. But the one thing I do know, Tony, is you never negotiate with the moonshot. You accept it and you go with it. So I called up Monty, who is still my CTO at SYNDUIT. And this woman, Katie, was my director of operations. And I said, I have an idea. I'm going to do it with or without you guys, but I can't imagine you not being involved. Let's build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies in the next 10 years. Are you in? And their exact words were, we're in because it's you, but we have no idea what you're talking about. I said, okay, let me explain. We're going to launch a tech ecosystem. Some people might think this is an incubator. Some might call it an accelerator, but it's neither of those. Those are great. That's just not what this is. This is a place where entrepreneurs from around the world can come to pitch their tech ideas. Ideas as early as like a napkin, like a concept written on a piece of paper, or as mature as a minimum viable product, like a prototype that hasn't even really launched yet. And when they pitch us, so it's really early stage. So when they pitch us, there's 4 things that we're going to look for: the right person with the right idea in the right market and the right business model. And when those 4 things are present, we will co-found a company with that entrepreneur. We'll both take equity in the company, so our values are just perfectly aligned. And then we build the entire company at cost: software development, go-to-market, creative, branding, sales, customer support, investor relations, legal, bookkeeping, like everything. And about 97% of the initial cost for the minimum viable product, which we call minimum viable company, is at cost in India in a company that I've owned since 2017. So the risk is low and the cost is low. So Monty and Katie said, let's do this. So 2 years ago, we launched Project 10K, which is a project to build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. In the first 2 weeks, we co-founded 7 companies. And Monty called me up and he goes, Jared, you have to slow down. I'm like, no, dude, you got to speed up. We have 9,993 to go. And I feel immense pressure right now, but I get it. Listen, I was flying a plane and Monty was putting the wings on at the same time. So I did slow down just so we can kind of calibrate, build out our infrastructure, mainly human infrastructure. We grew in India, in Canada, in the USA. We went from a few people to a few hundred people on the team. And about 15 months ago, we said, it's go time. And we stepped on the gas and we haven't looked back since. We have literally had thousands of entrepreneurs come through this process. We've co-founded a little over 140 companies in our first year, which is actually more remarkable than 10,000 in 10 years, because this is our year to figure this thing out. How do you scale software development? How do you scale go-to-market? How do you scale bookkeeping? And we figured it out. But what I'm more proud of than figuring it out is that we are not playing law of averages. It's not like if we launch enough companies, we get a couple of winners. Like when we say yes to an entrepreneur, because they go through a lot with us to even get to the point of a yes. But when we say yes, we see a path to build, to scale, and to sell. All different levels of value, because some are solving big problems, some are solving not as big problems in the world. My certainty comes from 2 things. One is our team and our ecosystem. We have an extraordinary, talented group of people that work together. We also have a very powerful ecosystem of co-founders, investors, and strategic alliances. And the second thing is the amount of attention we have. It is literally remarkable. I always say we have $1 trillion of attention. We have $1 trillion of relationship capital that are surrounding the perimeter of Project 10K. And it's our responsibility to create an access point for these people to get involved. Politicians, athletes and celebrities, influencers, like icons in the tech industry, family offices, private equity, venture capital. And one of the people that we got the attention of is Grant Cardone. So I can pause there if you have any questions, or we can go down the path of how Grant got involved in this project.
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. Thank you. I appreciate that. Needed pause because you actually had the infrastructure set up before you approached Grant. Like you already had founded several companies, and and you were already building up the momentum. And then Cardone came in later. It wasn't like Grant Cardone came in the beginning, the first day, the first company.
Yeah, we were like well over a year. We already had a few hundred employees. We already had dozens of companies. I didn't approach Grant actually. He heard about me through the grapevine of what we were doing, and he told his president, "This dude is crazy, or he's onto something, but I want to meet him." So that's literally how it happened. They invited me to come out to the office probably a little over a year ago, maybe a year ago from the time of this recording. And that was my first time meeting him. I knew of him, but I didn't know him personally. We were fully operational. We were doing our thing, and we hit it off. And he really enjoyed what we are doing. Me, I enjoyed him. I had leverage because I asked those 3 questions. Like I asked 3 questions like, "Hey, Grant, before we get into me, because I know you're really curious about me, I'm curious about you. what are you most proud of, man? And then he spoke and I listened and I spoke into what he was most proud of. And I'm like, oh, it's freaking amazing, Grant. Like, I didn't know that's what you're most proud of. Like, Grant, what are you most excited about right now, though? You got a lot of things going, but this minute, what are you most excited about? He goes, Jared, I'm excited about this and this and this. I'm like, dude, I didn't know any of that. Like, we got to start talking about that stuff. Before you go to me, Grant, tell me what's your vision for the future? Like, what's left for you? And he spoke into his vision. And his vision into the future was, I want, I think it was like 1 billion people to know my name, and not to know my name, but know 10X. Because if they know 10X, it's going to radically change their lives. Now I knew about his past, his presence, and his future. I had everything I needed to positively influence that dialogue, as long as I could take him from his vision, his future, and make that his presence. And then we started speaking. And what Grant realized, whether he says this or not, but he has said this to me, is that he didn't want to miss out on this, because he knew I was doing it with or without him, and he couldn't do it without me. Like, he knew it. He's like, Jared, you're doing it with or without me, and I can't do this without you. I want to get involved. So he made a pretty significant investment to join us. That was really the first step, was he made an investment into Project 10K. And then from there, he's one of our strategic alliances. So he launched 10X Incubator, which is kind of like a referral source, if you want to call it that, where he goes out to his 10X community and says, if you have a tech idea and you want me to co-found it with you, and this is Grant saying it, fill out this form. Our partners at Project 10K are going to review it. And if they see potential, we'll all co-found. And we have a dozen plus relationships like Grant. So that's how Grant got involved. He's an investor in Project 10K as well. And the reason he invested is that what we built here is very similar to his thesis in real estate. Because in real estate, he says, never invest in any piece of real estate where only one person can pay you. Because then there's only one person that can't pay you too, and then you're in a bind. That's why he buys multifamily, right? And he has almost 15,000 doors, because those 15,000 doors represent 15,000 families that are going to pay $2,000 to $3,000 a month for rent. And as a result, it creates passive income for himself and for all of his investors as they're just making their general rent payments. Our model is the exact same thing, but it's with tech. And the rent payments are a lot more than $2,000 to $3,000 a month. They're distribution, it's profit distribution at a certain point. So that's what made sense to him, because he knows tech's here and it's only going to get bigger. Like, he's not blind to that. Like, he tells people only invest in things that you can touch, because that's what he knows. But he also knows that tech has limitless upside potential. But for him to put a couple $1 million into one tech company, that's like him putting a couple $1 million into like a home that he's going to rent out. He doesn't do that. So when he puts it into the portfolio, and the portfolio owns currently 140 plus companies, that makes more sense as we're on our journey to build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. One more point I want to share why we're doing this, because it's so critical for everybody. We are democratizing and decentralizing technology. Democratizing means we're creating a table where everyone is welcome. Because right now, the vast majority of tech is in Silicon Valley in California, which is the single most pretentious place in the world. If you don't have the right pedigree, right skin color, right gender, right economic background, you have no shot. Like, there's just not a possibility. They're going to say otherwise, but you got no shot. I stand against it. This minute, we have more women than men founders, which is not even intentional, it just kind of happened. So we have more women than men founders. We have pretty much every ethnicity represented. We have people that dropped out of high school and those that have graduated from the top business schools in the world. Our youngest founder is 11. Our oldest is 77, because it's never too early or too late to become a tech founder. So we are democratizing it. We are creating a table where everyone is welcome. And as long as you're the right person with the right idea and the right market and the right business model, we're going to give you a shot. And then we're decentralizing it. And what decentralizing it means that you can be anywhere and become a successful tech founder. We are in the process of opening up what we call Project 10K Tech Hubs in 1,000 tier 3, 4, and 5 cities around the world, physical locations. It's a licensing play. We partner with the municipality, innovation centers, universities, successful entrepreneurs, and we have tech hubs in places like Bend, Oregon, Skokie, Illinois, Fayetteville, Arkansas, the Dominican Republic. And these physical hubs bring together the local accredited investors with the people that have had business success as mentors and those that have tech ideas. We staff each physical hub with what we call our validation team, and we validate companies locally and then scale them globally, literally creating innovation on a local level. This is called decentralizing technology. One of our hubs is the Dominican Republic, and the person who's kind of leading this charge with us, he's the head of economic development for the DR. And he was with me the other day in the studio in Miami. And I said to him, why are you excited about Project 10K? And his response is my driving force behind this. And what he said to me is that every little boy and little girl that's born in the DR is told, become immensely valuable so that eventually you can leave the DR to experience all the opportunity that exists in the world. And he said, in my life, I want to know that I created that opportunity in the DR. So if they want to stay in the DR because that's where their family is, they can. And Project 10K is that opportunity. And I'm like, freaking goosebumps, bro. That is the reason I'm doing this. That is it. Like changing the entire trajectory of lives in a country. But the same holds true for our country. 2 weeks ago, I had this gentleman pitch me and on our show, and he's in Kansas, a little tiny town in Kansas. And he's a successful real estate investor. And his idea is in the property tax space. So he's very relevant to have this idea. He's also a graduate, undergrad, and MBA from Stanford University. So top business school, okay? And he lives in this small little town. I said, why are you living there? He said, I grew up here. My whole family's here. This is exactly where I want to be. He's overlooked. He is the right person with the right idea and the right market and the right business model, but he's not in Silicon Valley or New York or Miami. So he gets no attention whatsoever. We're co-founding a company with him. That's called decentralizing technology. So we're democratizing it. Everybody's welcome on the table and decentralizing. You could be anywhere you want to be. We're bringing our infrastructure to you.
Thank you, Jared. Jared, I want to get into the questions just a little bit. That was brilliant. I just want to fill in the gaps with the story a little bit. So I just want to clarify, how many entrepreneur ventures were you on since graduation up until now with the 10K incubator? Like how many did you have? And how many were successful, you know, or if you want to just share, condense the record a little bit and just to, so we can understand how you got to this journey.
Yeah.
I'm a numbers guy, so I'm just trying to.
So, probably like five. Five. None failed. One of them didn't reach its potential with me because it was a partnership and we had different definitions of integrity. So when I realized that theirs was different than mine, and I happen to think that integrity is a universally defined term, which is do what's right regardless of who's watching. And that's not happening with my partners. So I'm like, yeah, I'm done. You guys take the equity, we're done. We're separating ways. And they were like, what? Like, because it was like successful fast. I'm like, I am done. I'm not here anymore. And it goes back to like what I shared earlier. If my kids ever look at me at night and they're not proud of me, I really failed. And if I were to have stayed with that, I would have been a failure in their eyes. So it just wasn't worth it to me. In addition to that, I have this rule. I didn't make this up, but I deploy it hardcore. Every problem that I've ever had in my life, every problem that you've ever had in your life, any problem that anyone that listens to this has had in their life is the direct result of letting the wrong person into their life. So I'm overly sensitive to that feeling inside when something feels wrong. I will either not engage or I'll disengage very quickly. So that was one of those scenarios. But I had 5 companies, none of them failed. They're all relatively successful. That partnership failed. So I then left. And now we are like married 140 times in 1 year. So we're really sensitive to partnerships. And for the most part, we've had very positive relationships. We've had a couple peaceful divorces. Those divorces have given us more optics into what we mean when we say right founder. Because like there's an element of characteristic that has to be present in what we call the idea person. And if it's not present, there's no way the relationship will succeed. So we identify it, we test for it in our due diligence. And if we see it, we are all in. But even if one of the criteria is not there, we're all out. Like we won't, there's no reason to gamble with the piece that's going to make the whole thing work.
Your biggest company other than the 10X incubator, the one right before it, the one you said that you had 40,000 employees, that was called, SYNDUIT, was that right?
SYNDUIT. So the company is Project 10K. 10X
That's still active too, Jared?
Well, just for accuracy, so the company is actually called Project 10K.
Oh, okay.
10X Incubator is just Grant Cardone's promotional vehicle for Project 10K. So like he's a promotional partner for us. SYNDUIT doesn't have 40,000 employees. It has 40,000 paying users. It is still active. I still own it. I have spent no time on it for 2 years now. I have a very strong team that runs that company in its entirety. They do a wonderful job, but I still own it. We are selling it this year. There's a ton of demand for it. It's really a great business. We've broken into niches that most big tech companies want to break into. And either they can go the roundabout way or they could just buy it. So then they're in it. So I am very open to selling it this year, mainly because I want our current team to have a Jared again, because there's no way that company can accelerate the way it did when I was at the helm, because it doesn't have me doing what I did. And I also know that I'm not going to do that anymore. That was a chapter of my life. So it's a great business. It just needs someone to really push on it. And we have a lot of interest from big tech companies and family offices and private equity firms. So that exit will happen this year. I'm really looking forward to it more for my team there than for me, because they'll just get the right steward at the helm to drive the thing forward again.
And then you'll be able to focus 100% on the.
I'm already 100%. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
100% on Project K. It's more of like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I really should give them a little bit of attention, but I truly can't. Like, so I'm also very self-aware. So where I'm best is in the 0 to 1 phase. Like I might be one of the best in the world at 0 to 1, and 0 to 1 means that you have this with some chicken scratch on it, and I can turn this into something that can make money. That's where I'm best. It's where I have the most fun. But like, once it's like proven, I'm just not that interested anymore. Like, I just like lose it. Like, for most people, they'd rather have the proven thing and they'd rather take it the distance. So I'm the 0 to 1. We look for the 1 to infinities to buy these companies. So, because I'm just not, I just know myself, right? Now, my team is not as hardcore on 0 to 1. So that's what's great about Project 10K, is that like, I'm fanatical about 0 to 1. Once we figure it out, like we duct tape it together, we get people paying for it. We're like, okay, we got product market fit. I have a very strong team that takes it from like 1 to 10, and then we sell it. Like at 10, we sell it. Like, because from 10 to infinity is a somewhat arduous, very resource intensive journey. So when I say build, scale, sell, that doesn't mean like in 10 years. Like that means that we're going to build, scale, and sell ideally within 18 to 24 to 36 months from when we launch them. And at the very least, get an offer in 18 months. Just have an offer on the table. We don't have to take it. We want to do something radical in that time frame to justify an exit. And that's why we do crazy go-to-market strategies, like crazy stuff to get attention, get velocity, and then to go for that exit.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. Jared, this was great, man. You're doing awesome. I appreciate you. We're going to move into the questions now. I figure about 1 minute to 2 minutes tops each question, about 20, 25 questions, just to make good time. Okay. So a lot of these are pretty simple. Like the next question is about books. Do you have any books out there that you want to share? Have you written a book yet? If not, do you have intentions to write any books?
So I started writing a book. So it's funny you asked that question. We were just talking about this morning. So we co-founded 7 companies in 2 weeks. And then Monty's like, you got to slow down. And I really honored it, because I knew that if I kept on pushing, the whole thing would implode. So, because we have a really compelling offer. You got a tech idea, we're going to co-found with you. Like, who doesn't want that offer? Like, it's like, that's just amazing. So I'm like, I got to stop saying that for a little bit so we can just like build some level of infrastructure. So I kind of felt like I was retired. I'm like, what am I going to do until Monty's ready for me again? So I started writing this book, which is called So You Want to Be a Tech Founder. And it's really great. It's actually like awesome. And I'm like 98% done. And the reason I didn't finish the 2% is because then Monty's like, I'm ready for you. And I just went so hardcore on getting deals. So I'm going to finish it. The team's like, you have to finish this thing within 60 days. So it will be live soon-ish. It's a really great book, and it's for non-technical people and tech people that want to become tech founders. And it just explains how I did it. Because one of the reasons why people don't, when they're non-technical, is that they think they need to be technical to actually do it. But I am non-technical. Like I have not one engineering bone in my body. So this literally is a roadmap on how to do what I did. And a part of that is just partner with us. We make it exponentially easier. I didn't have that piece. So I speak into like the dark moments of what I did on my own, but I made it. I just don't think people have to experience those dark moments, because we actually could do it with them.
So Jared, we got it on record here. You're going to be done this book in 60 days. You said it.
That's 2% left, so 60 days.
All right, that's cool. And Jared, if you need any help with that, or endorsement or preface or whatnot, just let me know. I'd be happy to do that for you. I actually my 3 books here would started my journey as an educator. So I love writing. That's my
awesome.
Number one. So yeah, be happy. And Jared, that's incredible, man. Like if you got that book, I mean, that could be a launching pad. Like what Grant did, you get that one book, it becomes your like your giant business card, really.
Yeah.
It can help you with so many things. So yeah, that's awesome. All right, Jared. So thank you. Appreciate that. And moving on to the next question. So we already touched on a lot of these questions, but I want to just zone in a little bit. You told us about 10X Incubator. It was one of my questions here. Maybe you can condense it in 30 seconds. What is 10X Incubator? What was your 30-second answer to that?
Yeah, so it's called Project 10K.
Project 10K?
Yeah, and Project 10K it's a tech ecosystem. So if you have a tech idea that you've written on a piece of paper, it could be a software as a service, it could be a social media platform, it could be a marketplace, and it's an idea that solves some inefficiency in your personal or professional life, it's stealing your time, your money, or both, I encourage you to, at the very least, pitch us. Just pitch us. Give yourself the permission to have this not just sit on a piece of paper in your wallet that's never going to become a reality, and just pitch us. It's really a fun experience. If you go to project10k.com/validate, you can literally go through the process and pitch us. And I encourage you to do it, because once you pitch us, we become a sounding board for you. And our goal is, we're like, yeah, this is amazing. And then we move you through our process. We start doing more due diligence into you and the idea and the market and the business model. But the tech ecosystem where we co-found tech companies with entrepreneurs from around the world.
Jared, I'm sorry, I was looking on the Clubhouse. So you have a club called 10X Incubator. That's just the name of the club, but the actual company's Project 10K, right?
Yeah, we're not active on Clubhouse. So
Okay.
It was more from back in the day. But yeah, that was like Grant's thing to generate leads for Project 10K. Yeah.
That's the marketing genius.
Yeah.
It didn't work. All right. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. All right, Jared, next question. Some examples that, by the way, I want to give a shout out to C-Roc. C-Roc, has been very instrumental. We already connected before that, but to help us build our relationship together. So thank you, C-Roc. Some examples of companies that you funded so far. And I know that, speaking of Mike C-Roc, his Blueprint would have been an example. So do you want to speak on that maybe a minute or so?
Yeah, it's a great example. So Mike C-Roc came to me not with an idea, but with something that was stealing his money and his time, both personally and professionally. And that's where the greatest ideas are derived from. And for him, what it was is he invests multiple six figures every year into his personal and professional development. He's done this for many years. And that looks like courses and events and mentors. And what's great about Mike is that he does what he pays for. So he doesn't buy stuff and let it just accumulate dust like the treadmill in the basement. Like he goes all out, and he will go through the course. He will read the book. He will listen to the mentor. And his frustration was he wasn't getting the results that he was promised. And as someone that takes 100% responsibility, he was like, what am I doing? What am I not doing that's not causing the outcome? And we started talking about it. I said, what's interesting is that I believe that the personal and professional development industry is actually the problem. I don't believe it's you. I think it's actually a problem that everybody experiences. Because think about it like this. Imagine if, to bake a cake, you had to watch a 60-minute video and then bake the cake, right? Remember, that's how you do it. You watch the video, then you bake the cake. The likelihood of you being able to bake a cake after watching a 60-minute video is 0%. Because you're going to miss some ingredient or some step, and everything matters, right? Especially with baking. Like, you don't do the right order, you don't do the exact steps, you don't put the right ingredients in, the whole cake flops. Like, it's a disaster, right? So, but the personal and professional development industry expects people like us to watch 60-minute videos and then implement the steps. We don't know what the steps are because it's too long of a video. So, like, what we should do, Mike, is we should put together blueprints at scale. Like, we should go and create a marketplace of success where we help people that have achieved success reverse engineer exactly what they did to get to where they are today. And then people can go through the exact steps, not 60-minute videos, but the exact micro steps to produce the outcome. And that led to the birth of Blooprinted. Blooprinted was literally a sketch on a napkin like this. 1 year later, Blooprinted is a cash flowing tech company. C-Roc earned the opportunity to speak on the 10X GrowthCon stage. It was Donald Trump, it was Mike C-Roc, and 8 other billionaires. He got a chance to speak on the stage and actually sell Blooprinted from stage, onboarding thousands and thousands of people. That's the power of Project 10K partnering with the right people.
Wait, I'm sorry, 10 people were on stage, and 8 billionaires, Donald Trump, and then C-Roc was here?
Yeah, he was one of the
wow.
Talking about Blooprinted, like literally like pitching Blooprinted from stage. So that's the power of what we're doing, because less than a year ago, this was a napkin, like it was a concept. And 1 year later, it's a tech company built for limitless scale. So that's one example. Another great example is a platform called Canceled. So the founder of Canceled is a woman named Dr. Stephanie. She's a dentist in Ohio. And she watched a training that I did that talked about how to become a tech founder. And what I always say is the same thing. Identify in your personal and professional life what is stealing your time, your money, or preferably both. She then went into her office the next day, this is a number of months ago, and she said to her team, what is stealing our time, our money, or both? And they said, missed appointments. She goes, what do you mean? And they said, the number one expense that we have on our PLL, on our P&L is missed appointments, people that cancel and we can't find someone to fill their spot. She's $1 million office. She loses $72,000 a year for appointments that don't get rescheduled. And then she started talking to her colleagues and their numbers were even bigger because their practices were bigger. The number one expense for every dental practice in the world is people canceling an appointment and the staff's not able to fill that spot. So they're losing $300 to $3,000 depending on what procedure was going to take place. So we built a platform called Canceled, which is a rescheduling software for dentists. It's literally amazing. We're now launching it for chiropractors and for hairstylists as well. We'll grow through other industries. Literally an idea on a piece of paper, a non-technical entrepreneur that met the criteria that we're looking for has a company that's built for limitless scale. We just recently launched it. I expect we'll have 5,000 dentists on the platform within 365 days. The annual recurring revenue on that will be over $6 million a year. And the way that B2B SaaS, which is software as a service, gets valued is between 7 to 20 times top line revenue. It's not valued off of EBITDA because for early stage B2B SaaS, there's not usually a lot of earnings because you keep on reinvesting to grow the business. So 7 to 20 times top line revenue. 7 to 20 times top line revenue in a year. Let's just say it's 5 times top line revenue. It's a $30 million company. And it'll be valued more than that. So listen, I'm not saying everything becomes that, but when you identify something is stealing your time or your money or both, and you have the right partners in place, which is what we do. We literally co-found companies with entrepreneurs like Dr. Stephanie and Mike C-Roc. That's the outcome that we cause together.
And Jared, just to add on that, so you have 146 companies founded so far?
It's a moving target. We co-found companies like every day. So between 140 and 150. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And it's been in operation for 2 years. Do you foresee yourself reaching, I mean, even halfway that in the next 2-3 years?
We'll surpass it. Yeah. So it's really been about a year. Like we've been, we paused any onboarding for about a year just because we had the 7 companies fast. Yeah. So in a little over a year, we've done almost 150 companies. We'll surpass 10,000 in 10 years because there's just a point where this velocity just gets out of control. Yeah. Think about company 3,112. It's a guaranteed success because we have 3,111 companies that have already launched, collectively probably 1 billion end users across all companies. We know exactly what those end users are paying for because they're part of an ecosystem. Yeah. We know what inefficiencies they experience. We know what problems they want to solve. And we literally can now go through our existing user base across all of our companies and say, these 12,000 people need that solution. And the day we drop the solution, we get 4,000 buyers. So it just gets easier and easier and easier over the course of time. We'll have more than 10,000 tech companies.
Yeah, being a numbers guy, I mean, all you got to do is look at numbers in general. The fact that you've done 100 and let's just say 140 is a low number, 140, and let's give you a year, right? Exponential numbers compounding. If you double a penny every day by the end of the month, 30-day month, you're talking about $10 million just from doubling, right? You got 146 as your basis. Even if you doubled it for the next 9 years, like you'd be there in a few years. So,
we'll blow through it. Yeah, it's in like we have a roadmap too. Like we're exactly where we should be, but like we have a roadmap. Like we won't onboard more than the KPI on a monthly basis because we know we're getting there. There's not a question in my mind that we're getting there. It was more of like, how do we get the first 3?
Yeah, it's important.
The question, like, how do we figure it out? How do we literally turn this into a company that can make money? And once we did that a few dozen times now, I'm like, there's no one knows. Like, I don't need to figure out company 5,000. Like I've kind of already figured it out. We have the systems to get there. And we're investing hard right now into infrastructure. We're starting to acquire mature infrastructure versus building it. So as we grow our software development team, as an example, instead of just like we're opening a Latin America team. We're not going to start from zero there. We're going to buy a software development firm in Latin America that has a few hundred employees. So we're starting with a few hundred employees, and then we're going to just build on top of that versus literally setting up a company and hiring employee 1 in Latin America. That's what I did in India. That was very difficult. I don't need to do that again now that we've built a model. So we're making way more calculated decisions that allow us to scale frictionlessly.
Anyone else doing this?
There's
In the
no
world?
one in the world. They literally, and that's not me saying that, like, because I actually hate when people say that to me, where they're like, there's no one that does what we do. There's no one that does what we do at scale. So there's a business model called venture studios, which I never even heard of until about a month ago. And one of the family offices that we work with, the gentleman that made the money for the family office said to me, dude, you built a venture studio on steroids. I'm like, yeah, we did. I didn't even know what it was. So I'm like, all right, let me look up what is a venture studio. And it's the thing that mirrors us the most closely. But what venture studios are, is they start as venture capital funds, and there's general partners and limited partners. And for the most part, they'll invest in 7 to 10 companies a year, and usually 70% of them fail. And they're like, oh, if I only had that money for the failures, or I put them into my own ideas, we would have made so much money. And they're like, well, why don't we do that? So they hire a token engineer and a product person and a marketing content writer, and they start to look at the world. They identify problems, and they will pick 1 to 4 things to solve each year. And if they validate it, they'll then hire an executive team to run it. The difference is they do 1 to 4 a year. We did almost 150 in our first year, and we don't ideate, we crowdsource, we go to the world for their ideas. So the model is somewhat similar, although what we're doing is just at a scale that's never been done before. Like, and I mean, like, and that's not my words. Like, we've partnered with some of the largest tech incubators and accelerators in the world that have been around for dozens of years. They partner with us because they're like, there's nothing that is infrastructure the way that you've established your infrastructure. And I'm not taking credit. It's a complete team effort. We have an extraordinary leadership team, and the universe is conspiring for the win, because when we win, the world wins. The amount of economic impact this produces, jobs, internships, solving of inefficiency, keep people in countries. But it's what I started with before, when I said to you that I believe it's a parent's responsibility to set baselines in the life of their children, not by what they say, but by what they do. Think about all the parents that have become tech founders with us now. And they're now going to go after an ambitious outcome. They were a 9-to-5 employee that had an idea, and now they found someone to partner with in that idea. So they're going after their ambitious outcome. Their little Johnny, who's growing up watching their mom go after that outcome. And then all of a sudden, she sells the company for $38 million with us. The baseline established in little Johnny's life is a completely different baseline than if we didn't exist in the first place. So what's interesting about what we're doing is, as much as I care about building, scaling, and selling 10,000 tech companies in the next 10 years, what I care exponentially more about is who each person becomes in the process. So that when they sell, if their spouse hates them, their kids don't know them, and they have autoimmune disease because they made bad health decisions, we failed them. So as much as we're talking building, scaling, selling, what we're also talking is, who are you becoming in the process? Like, what did you do today in the gym? What did you eat today? What are you listening to? What are you doing with your kids? When's your date night? Like, it is a freaking ecosystem. It is crazy. It is completely like over the top from the standpoint of like, it's like a lifestyle, and everyone that's in it, as much as they care about their own success, they care about the success of the ecosystem. So there's a lot of support that we've built inside the model.
Thank you, Jared. Jared, just to extend that, the next question is actually about, because you're the only one doing it, what's it going to take for Silicon Valley to directly compete with you? What's it going to take? Let me preface that, for them to catch up to where you guys are and strip down all the barriers that have been created for, decades now to get where they are. What's it going to take for them to wake up, kind of like Netflix is waking up Hollywood right now for you?
Or the other way around, like we've woken up Silicon Valley, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So they're not going to, though, right? Because like it's not built for that. I actually think what's going to happen is Silicon Valley is just going to change, and what's going to happen is the way that they currently value companies is going to be exponentially different, because like exponentially, because right now they're valued, and I get it, they're right for the way they're valuing it. They like for example, Tim Draper is an icon in the Valley. He's a venture capitalist. His great grandfather started venture capital. Like, that's how critical he is in the entire ecosystem of tech. So I'm on Tim Draper's board, and we talk about this all the time. And when venture capitalists in the Valley look to make investments, they make very large investments into companies, and they will look at 100 companies, make one investment. And the reason they're doing that is because they're looking at every single thing that could go wrong across those 100 companies, and they're looking to pick the one that has the greatest chance for success, which is what they should do. So they might be saying no to an investment in a company that's really a great company, but their CFO is weak, Or they might say no to a company that's an amazing company, but their product manager isn't the right product manager. Or maybe they're saying no to a company, even though they're doing really well financially, but because their founder doesn't have a true vision of where it's going. So there's so many factors that they look at, which is why like 1 in every 100 will actually get a check. The reason we're disrupting it is because we've controlled the variability. Like we built the infrastructure, like we are literally the team of every one of these companies. So what we're going to create is a new standard, which is if it's a Project 10K company, it's investable. Now they make a decision based on the idea co-founder and their idea. That's it. They don't have to worry about what's the go-to-market team, what's the finance team, what's the bookkeeping team, what's the investor relations team, what's the product team, what's the engineering team. We create a new standard in the space of tech so they could just look at idea person and their idea. So that's the role that Silicon Valley plays in what we've caused here.
You're shifting the whole paradigm.
Whole paradigm,
Really interesting. Wow.
Whole paradigm. And then in addition to that, we're going to shift who invests in it too, because like right now, the world of investing in tech is a rich man and rich woman's game. You have to be accredited. There's really no other way to get involved. And the Reg CF, which is a chance for non-accredited people to invest, is extremely expensive for companies to get in motion. Like it's just, there's too many fees involved. So if you're using a Reg CF and you're raising, I don't know, a few $100,000, which is really what it should be used for, it could cost you $30,000 or $40,000 to get $200,000. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's like, that's just so expensive to get that kind of money. So what's happened now is like people are using Reg CF for larger raises, which is really not the purpose of it. That's the venture world. Like use Reg CF for like the pre-seed world, like before it's completely proven and people aren't taking that much risk. They're putting $10, $100. So the Reg CF model is just completely flawed. So we're working with the regulators in Florida. I hope this happens. This is kind of a really significant moonshot. The commissioner is doing this. He's amazing. This commissioner, he's a ex-security lawyer. He wants to change the accredited investor status. So it's not based on the investor, but it's based on the company being investable. Because the SEC says that if you want to invest in private placement, especially with equity, like the way we're doing it, like you can, real estate's very different, but with us, it'd be accredited, which means that as an individual, you have to make $200,000 a year, as a family, make $300,000 a year. And we've had people that have wanted to invest in individual companies, like friends and family, and one person makes 180 and their spouse makes 100, and they don't actually meet the threshold. And that's absurd. They live in the middle of the country. They have no debt. They have $700,000 sitting in the bank, but they haven't met any of the criteria to be deemed accredited. So he's like, why don't we make the company the thing that becomes the yes or no versus the person who knows what they're doing with the $10,000 they want to put into this company. So I'm very intense about allowing and bringing opportunities to those that currently can't invest in deals like this to start investing, because the thing about tech is there's no other vehicle that can produce the type of economics that tech can. Like real estate just can't do that. Like it doesn't grow, it doesn't have valuation like that. There's a really great story. Remember Joe Montana, the football player? He was in the 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs. So when Joe Montana played football, it was in an era where there were not big contracts. His entire career, he made $25 million, which is good. But just for reference, the quarterback for the Rams that just won the Super Bowl, he signed a 4-year, $160 million contract. So in 1 year, he made almost double what Joe Montana, one of the best quarterbacks in history, made his entire career. But off the field, Joe's done very well for himself because he's accredited. He invests in early stage tech. He put $100,000 into a company called GitLab about 6 years ago. GitLab sold at the end of 2021 for $16 billion. His $100,000 turned into $43 million. $43 million. So I get it. $100,000 for a non-accredited investor might be a lot of money, but they could put in 10, and it's all relative, right? So it's all relative. They put in 10, they're gonna have made $4 million, changes their freaking world. I don't know a vehicle that can produce that. Not that every company becomes that, but when people are educated enough to make investment decisions, they should make their own investment decisions. And now they're not allowed to. So I'm a real proponent of creating more access for people to invest in early stage tech, because when the right team is present, there's a very good chance that thing becomes something meaningful. It doesn't need to become $1 billion exit for it to make sense. Like it could become a $3 million a year company that gets a 7 times top line revenue. So it sells for 20. It made a lot of sense for the person that put in 10 grand in the beginning. And that really does change their life.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate that. And the stock market average has only been 10% throughout history. So, I mean, even if they got something like that, 10% of 100,000 is 10,000. 10% of 10,000 is $1,000. Even they made $1,000 of a $10,000 investment.
They wouldn't get 10% for the
Yeah.
$10,000, but they don't need to. And it's not about
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
that. It's about both, right? I mean, this is like your world. Like, so what I tell people all the time is, because right now our world for the most part is accredited investors. But I'm like, listen, if you are an accredited investor, you just allocate a portion of your portfolio that you're comfortable with to early stage tech. The same way that most people that are invested in real estate, they have something in the markets. Now they have crypto, like they have life insurance, like this should just be a holding. So maybe it feels too volatile because it's private placement. So there's no liquidity to it until there is. Like, so put 3%, but have some discipline around early stage tech. The challenge is to find deals. Like the average accredited investor doesn't have access to any deals. Like, so if they're lucky, they'll see a deal every 4 years. That's risky.
Mhm.
That's why what we're doing is really disruptive, because we have so much deal flow. The deal flow is so high quality because what it takes to even get in is Herculean. Like, we're, as much as we created a table for everybody to sit at, it's not free lunch. Like they got to earn their way in. Like,
Yeah.
and we're not measuring their economics. We're not measuring their, like, where they went to college. We don't care. Like, we care about these 8 criteria that every founder needs, these 12 criteria that every idea needs, these 6 criteria that every market needs, and these 10 criteria that every business model needs. And if they're there, we're a yes, but there's a lot of things we're assessing, because what we don't want to do is create false hope, where we start saying yes to things and then they fail. So we don't have a crystal ball, but we do know if those criteria are present, it dramatically increases the likelihood of the outcome.
Thank you, Jared. Great answer. Jared, maybe 30 seconds. What is technology?
It's limitless scale. So technology is the only thing that has limitless attached to it. There is no capacity to technology. So like when I was running the marketing agency, there was capacity to my ability to serve. And then once we pivoted to marketing SaaS, software as a service, limitless capacity. I could never handle 40,000 clients as an agency. We have 40,000 end users. We have a dozen people on the team. Freaking wild, right? Like wild. Our team with the few hundred clients we had, I don't know, 5 times that. It was a pretty large team. And now it's a fifth of it. And we're handling 100 times more. It's limitless.
Thank you, Jared. Next question. Why do you like technology so much? Maybe 30 seconds.
Freedom. Yeah. So everything I do is to create more freedom for myself, my family, and for those around me. It's just the freedom it produces. Like, listen, the technology industry has also taken freedom, which is what I'm motivated to give people back. Like what Facebook has done with people's data, suppressing sides of this, of reality. That's just not cool. So, but when done right, it just produces immense levels of freedom.
Thank you, Jared. Brilliant response. Jared, why did you want to partner with Grant Cardone? And you touched on this already, but maybe 30 seconds or so much. It could have been anybody. It could have been anybody out there.
It wasn't even like I wanted to, because like I went into that meeting with literally no expectation of anything other than I'm going to meet him. I can't even say I was a fan. I wasn't not a fan. I mean, I knew of him. I didn't read any of his books. Wasn't really following him on social. I knew of him. I'm impressed with what he's done. Like that's impressive. Like it's remarkable actually what he's done. Like self-made. So it wasn't that. It was the fact that it was leverage though. I'm trying to think back to it. It wasn't like a desire. To me, it's like I want to partner with everybody who is integrous, who is committed, who cares about entrepreneurship, who is going to give more than they take. So it's not even Grant. He just met those criteria. But like we have dozens of grants now that are in our ecosystem. Like some that are, I would even some say bigger than Grant because they're in the tech industry that are part of what we're doing. So it wasn't necessarily Grant. There's just criteria to what we look for in any relationship. And as long as it's present, we invite them to participate.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Jared. Next question. What is the difference between being a partner and being a co-founder with Grant Cardone? I want to preface this question. I'll come back to it again. So there are a lot of people out there, you know, Grant Cardone, I'm a partner with, they would say, they put it on their resume. I hear this on Clubhouse all the time. You know, I look at their bios, but you're not just a partner. I mean, you're a co-founder with them. What's the difference between those two?
Equal responsibility. I don't even talk about it too. I think that's part of it. Like at all, like ever, like you're asking questions which we're talking about it, but like I'm on 10 podcasts a week. I don't think on any of them I even talk about it, and no, for no reason other than it's not necessarily relevant. But partnership, like, I don't know if there's a difference between those two terms, but what I do know is that, and this, am I allowed to say the word SHIT on here? Is that okay?
Yeah, good. It's a 10x1,000 fine though.
Okay, cool.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I have this concept, and this is like really, this is going to sound vulgar, but it's such an important lesson for everybody to gain.
Yeah.
Everybody poops. It should be your responsibility to make them shit. So what do I mean by that? Grant poops. The dude poops. I poop. You poop. Like we all poop. We're all human beings, right? The people that put the Grants on a pedestal will never have a chance to work with Grant because he doesn't want to be on a pedestal. He wants someone coming to him and make him shit. Like, whoa, like that excites me. So he asked me to partner. Like he asked me to get involved. And I'm not saying that from like an ego thing here, but for those that are like, oh, I want to like do something with Grant, then you got to help Grant get to a place that he can't get to on his own. And you have to be going there regardless of whether or not he joins you. So many people, whether it's Grant, Gary Vaynerchuk, Dave Meltzer, that want like influencers to support them. The only way they're ever going to support you is if you have leverage over them. And what that looks like and sounds like is you're doing it with or without them, and they can't do it without you. And as long as that happens, they're going to say, I want to get involved. Dave Meltzer is doing the same thing with me that Grant's doing with me. Kevin Harrington is doing the same thing with me that Grant's doing with me. We have icons, people that your audience might not know, in Silicon Valley, doing the same thing that Grant's doing with me. We have the largest incubators and accelerators in the world that have been around for decades. They're doing the same thing that Grant's doing with me. We have multi-billionaires, and many of them that are like partnered with us, doing this with us. And I'm sharing this because they all poop and I just make them shit. Every time they hear what we're doing and what we're, not just hear it, see it, they're like, holy crap, holy shit, I got to get involved with this. That's the outcome I go for. Whenever I meet somebody, my outcome is you're going to dream about me tonight. Like my joke with my attorneys is that I get free legal service. They're like, how do you get free legal service? I'm like, because I'm by far your most interesting client and you dream about me at night and you can't bill me when you dream about me. So you'll wake up with, and you'll be like, you'll call me first thing in the morning, Jared, I got an idea based on what you said yesterday. I'm like, when did you think about it? I think I dreamed about it. I'm like, cool, you can't bill me for that, right? Like, oh, right, free advice, right? But and so the whole premise of this is, if you want someone like a Grant, and there's a lot of Grants out there, there are a lot of influence. The key is make sure it's the relevant person that's going to be a real relevant accelerator for you. And you have to make sure that you have leverage, because if you don't have leverage, they're not going to give you the time of day. But when you do have leverage, they're going to ask to get involved because they are very opportunistic and they have the same amount of fear of missing out that you have. So they don't want to miss out. They want something bigger than what they have today. You need to be the path to get them there, but not because you need them. You're doing it regardless of them. You're inviting them to go on the journey with you.
Jared, we got a little bit more than we bargained for here. You actually taught people how to be a master networker. And just real quick, before we move to the next question, I just want to share with you a quick story. We had Rami El-Batrawi on here as a guest. He's a billionaire, I guess, doing many different things. And Rami he was once the right-hand man for Adnan Khashoggi, which was like the richest guy in the world back in the 80s. And he told the story how he got him to become his right-hand man. And he said, I followed him around for years. And I just basically, I had to make sure that he knew I was on the same level as him. So he rented the places next door to him, wherever he stayed, even though they were so expensive. He finally got connected with him. And then when he did, he's like, all right, after a year or so being with him, like, just give me one deal. And this all happened over a journey of making the other agree that they're on the same platform.
Yeah, but I have a totally different philosophy. This is really interesting. So this is a great lesson for everybody. So Grant talks about becoming omnipresent. I'm sure everybody hears him say that, right? So I've been talking about becoming omnipresent for like probably about 15 years. I never heard him say that before, and he never heard me say that before, but we both talk about it. And omnipresence means that your audience thinks you're everywhere. And we both believe that that matters, but we get there at different ways. The way that Grant gets there, and neither is right or wrong, it works. So they both work. But the way that Grant gets there is he incessantly talks about himself. They send out a dozen emails a day. They post on social media dozens of times a day. Like that's how he becomes omnipresent, is he is everywhere. He's on Clubhouse for hours a day. So it feels like Grant's everywhere. I have a very different approach. I get a lot of other people to talk about me, like a lot of other people, like a ton. So like your example of like that gentleman you were just referring to, I would not have done it the way he did it, because that's the Grant Cardone way. What I would have done is figured out who is surrounding that person that I want to connect with. And I would build relationships with all of those people. So all of those people are talking about me with that one person. And then eventually like, you got to just introduce me to this person. So that's how I do it. So like, if you think about Project 10K, we have dozens of grants that are going out there and talking about us almost every day in some capacity. And when they talk about us, it drives things to us, and we're omnipresent, like we're everywhere. And I never miss dinner with my kids one night. I put them in bed every single night. I only travel with them, so I don't travel for business. And I'm not saying this to boast. We just have different strategies on how to produce the same outcome for your audience. They just got to pick the strategy that works for them. So I just always look to catalyze others to talk about what we as a collective are doing. Grant does it for himself, and he's maybe the best in the world at speaking about himself. He's really good at that. I just don't do that. I have other people doing it for me.
Yeah, Pepsi and Coke, Jared. I mean, they both have two unique strategies, and they're both highly successful. I actually agree with your strategy 100%, and I use your strategy too. So, that's how we got connected, right? Like,
yeah, same thing. Yeah,
it's you go after the people that are connected around. Because I mean, Jared, I came from nowhere, South Philadelphia. I had to blaze my own trail, and I don't know any of those people, so I had to figure out a way to do it. And your strategy is highly effective. So I commend you on that, Jared. Appreciate that, man. All right. So next question. What is your exit strategy for Project 10K? So like you talk about exit strategy for the companies itself, but what is the exit strategy for the umbrella company? If there is
one, live on forever. This company will be the new standard of entrepreneurship. It won't only be tech in the future, it'll be entrepreneurship at large. My mom asked me probably a year ago, she goes, how will you know when you made it? And I said, well, no one even knows I started it. So I mean that, like this is way bigger than me. It will last way longer than me. That's why I guess I keep having babies. We have a third on the way, so they can potentially take it over. No, but I mean, there's no exit for the portfolio. This is just the standard, and we're not stopping at 10,000. We'll have hundreds of thousands of companies that we launch through this ecosystem. What I'm proving is that being in an ecosystem is exponentially more valuable than being on your own. Because think about this, people challenge me all the time. Like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, oh, you're one of those linear thinkers. You're worrying about the how, right? Mm-hmm. I just have to be one detail ahead of where I am at all times, and I already have my how. But regardless of that, let's just get practical. Do you think in the next 10 years, there will be at least 10,000 new tech companies? And they're always like, yeah, of course. There'll be way more than that. I'm like, cool, awesome. I'm like, do you think that an individual company on an island by itself has a greater chance of success where they have to do everything for themselves, or in an ecosystem of 9,999 others, who's a greater chance of success where the ecosystem shares everything, and users, investors, emotional support, strategies, like they share everything. They're like, yeah, the ecosystem. I'm like, well, that's what we're proving. So there is no exit to the portfolio. It lives on forever. Every individual company in the portfolio has their exit when the time is right for there to be an exit. We're just not stopping at 10,000, which is why it lives on forever.
Thank you, Jared. Brilliant response. Jared, next question, 30 seconds. What would you do if you discovered the next Facebook?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we're just going to do the right thing versus what's been done. So yeah, I think Mark Zuckerberg went from being one of the most iconic entrepreneurs in history to being the biggest sellout that's ever existed in the space of entrepreneurship. And I know it's not all him because he went public and doesn't have as much control, but he has a lot more control than people think. So we will, and we'll just do the right thing with it when we get there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jared. Jared, next question. Why could investing in technology be more profitable than real estate?
Just the valuations. There's no way to get valuation in real estate that compares with tech. And I know people are like, well, it's more stable. Yeah, maybe. Like maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of people would say otherwise. Like a lot of people in subprime would have wished that they invested in technology, right? So it's a maybe, and it's not a this or. It's an and. I think everything in life should be and. So to me, it's not about just picking real estate or tech. It's both, and they both serve different purposes. But there's no way real estate could ever have the valuation that tech has, because the multiples aren't there. Like you could literally be doing no revenue, like Clubhouse, and be valued at $4 billion. You can't do that in real estate. Like, and I'm not saying that's right. It's just what it is, right? So there's no way in the space of real estate that you can do that. You could be doing $10 million a year in revenue as a B2B SaaS company and get valued at $200 million. There's no property that happens with. Like it just doesn't work that way. So it's just the valuations are more extreme. And I always hear people say, yeah, but it's more stable real estate. It's just different. Like you're not comparing apples to apples, which is why you should have both. Like make a fruit salad and just let this be some of the fruit in the fruit salad.
Jared, I also want to give you a compliment as well, because I heard there was a video when you signing your operating agreement with Grant, and I thought it was super cool how you said it, and you tapped right in with that. Like you said, real estate's cute. And being from a real estate background, but I also have a diverse range of experiences with investment. I worked for the largest investment company in the world called Vanguard right out of college. 3 years. John Bogle, Warren Buffett's, protege, not protege, but like mentor and friend too. I saw him in the cafeteria every week. And I got to say that like, that was right on point for a guy like Grant, who's trying to do what he's trying to do, to expand that level. He needed that. He really needed to know that there's something else beyond there, to meet you and to say those words. It was like the magic words he wanted to hear, because it's true. To get to the level he wants, he's capped out right now, like 4 billion or whatever, 5 billion, and really to go to become that
real estate. But it's understanding what his vision is. His vision is that 1 billion people know his name. They're not going to know his name because of his sales training, and they're not going to know his name because of real estate. So if that's really what he wants, that's his outcome. He needs a better vehicle to get there, because he doesn't have the right vehicle to get there. Now, if he decides to change his mind, which everybody has the right to change their mind at any point in time in life, then he's good. Like he's good. Like economically, he's good. But that's not what's driving him now. What's driving him now is more significance, and that's fascinating. And that his significance is already pretty extraordinary. But he's a speck of dust in the world, and he knows that. Like he knows that. Like we go to tech stuff. Like Project 10K is in the tech world. When we would talk about Grant, they didn't even know who he was. Like they're like, Grant, I don't know that guy. Like they didn't even know who he is. And he's like, that's amazing. Like that's so amazing. Like in his world, he's larger than life. But in the world, he's a speck of dust. And like he loves that, because it just means there's so many more people he can reach. But what it also represents, he doesn't have the right offer to reach them. So having the right offer is the way to reach a lot of people. And like the right offer is everything. And for him, he has the right offer for his world. And that's why he has proven to produce such positive economics for himself and for many others as well. But if he wants Musk style, like Elon Musk has a better offer than Grant, right? That's why Elon Musk is $300 billion in net worth, right? It's a better offer. Like Elon is changing an entire industry of how people can transport themselves to places, right? It's just a better offer. Like, so if Grant wants that kind of acknowledgement, impact, he needs a different offer. And that's what 10X Incubator powered by Project 10K represents for him.
Thank you, Jared. Brilliant response. Jared, next question, 30 seconds. What are the top, I'm getting a little deep here. All right, so what are the top 3 inventions in history that changed the world?
Inventions in history.
Had the most impact on the world.
So one thing I'm going to say is the no code, low code industry, which we're very active in, is an absolute world changer. Most people don't even know what it is. What it's doing though is it's allowing innovation to happen way faster for significantly less money. That's so impactful that you can validate ideas within 60 to 90 days. Now that actually can like cash flow in that time frame. That's fascinating. So no code, low code is absolutely next level, and that's a world that I'm deeply involved with, so I can speak into that. The blockchain is immensely powerful. It's really getting watered down, which is unfortunate, but that's what marketers do. Marketers ruin everything, but it will prevail. But the blockchain as an actual utility is extremely powerful. The NFT crypto space, some of it's great, but 99% of it's not great. It's just complete air, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of people that are going to lose a lot of money in the process because of the hype. But then it'll stabilize, and then it'll be used what it's meant to be used for, which is just to decentralize, which is critical at this point. And then truly, I'm going to say anything that Elon Musk touches. Like he's an iconic, impactful entrepreneur. I'm sure people don't like him for political reasons, but he's what he's going to do in the space of ensuring, like just using Twitter as an example, to ensuring that both sides of the story have a chance to share their truth, because there's truth to both sides, is very important. Because the alternative is we've lost what makes our country, and what makes the world, which is freedom. So those would be the 3 things that stand out the most.
Thank you, Jared. Jared, great response. Next question I have for you. This is about Clubhouse. I know you've done some things in there. What have been your experiences with Clubhouse technology, and what are some of your future experiences? Do you plan on doing a lot more with that, et cetera? Maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's just okay. Yeah, I think the timing of it was good. People were lonely and at home, and so that's why it became what it became quickly. There's like a little bit. There's too much air for me. Like a lot of people that are just building these like profiles of things that they've actually not done. Like, it's showing more light on like the falsehood around entrepreneurship. I think the benefits of it are proximity to people that you can't get proximity to. I think there's a lot of like very stimulating conversations. I think these pitch rooms are not all of them, but a lot of them are like a joke. Like really what they're doing in there is like, it's just not cool. Like there's a way that could be done so much better. I've really, for the most part, disengaged. Like I'm very excited to be on your show, but I've disengaged. It's just a time drain. And I go back to what I said before. I am so intense with what I do with my time. It's to a crazy point. I actually have people that sit on Clubhouse that I've hired to just listen and try to like virtual assistant kind of people to just like listen for things that would be intriguing, and then to reach out to the people that say those intriguing things. And they're very authentic. They're not lying. They're like, hey, I'm here on behalf of Jared, and you said this, and you and Jared should talk. I understand if you don't want to, but because I'm not going to sit in there all day and just listen to people chatter and argue and such. So I think it's good. I think it could have been great. But I think that's like most things though. Like most things get watered down really fast. Like think about if Facebook didn't sell out, like how profound that company could have been. Like, so I'm not saying Clubhouse sold out. I think as a tech company, they've done a very good job. I think it's more of like how people use it, and it grew fast. So it's a little bit hard to moderate at this point. And there's a lot of other players that are in the space that I think will do a better job than Clubhouse has done. But that's the danger of being the first mover in a blue ocean. So like when we talk about the right market, there's two extremes. There's the red ocean and the blue ocean. The red ocean is highly competitive. It's a race to the bottom because everybody's just trying to compete for the same territory. And really all you can do there is eventually lose. So it's like the red represents blood. The blue ocean is a market where there's nothing in sight. So in theory, oh my gosh, I'm the first mover, and the first mover is riskier than those in the red ocean because the first mover has to first spend time and money educating their end user on a problem they didn't even know they have in the first place. Once they get it, they then sell them on a solution to a problem they didn't even know they had in the first place. And in almost all scenarios, the first mover is paving the way for everybody else to follow. Think about MySpace to Facebook is a good example. So I don't necessarily know if Clubhouse is going to like disintegrate, but it's going to go down in value for sure. Like there's no way it's going to maintain the market share that it has. And then the new companies that are going to come in are going to see what Clubhouse did well and double down, but then also see what they didn't do as well and build a better solution there. But Clubhouse, like they kind of got the world ready for social audio, which is awesome. Like, but they're like, now as a result, they will not get full valuation. They probably should have already sold if they could have to get full valuation.
No, it's a brilliant response, Jared. And as a microcosm that within Clubhouse, I think rooms are an example of like the entrepreneurial companies of blue ocean versus red ocean. Like there's been so much red ocean now in terms of clubs in Clubhouse. Like there's only a few top hosts, top stages that are left after a year of intense battling. Who's got the biggest stages? Who's got the, and this is not to sound arrogant or anything, but mine and my co-host were one of the two Breakfast with Champions, John Lee's room. They're maybe the four major last standers out of thousands of people that have tried to build their own rooms for a reason. The people come there for free. Like they want to get value, and you better deliver or else they'll move quicker than a normal stage. It takes time to get out of a seat and walk to the bathroom and leave. Here, all they got to do is press their button. They're out of their room. Yeah. So to sustain them for hours on time, week after week, it's like the most challenging thing possible. And I definitely equate it to what you're doing, like, because you're talking about 10,000 companies, but there was 10,000 plus clubs, and now the people have a lot of people left for that reason, because there's rooms talking about nonsense, and it's just bringing negative energy. And after a while, they get tired. They want to leave. They don't want to hear that all day long.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jared. Great response. Next question, I think you'll really like this. All right, if all the countries were completely democratized and individuals all over the world were operating at the highest levels of freedom, what would this planet look like in 5 years? Everybody's free. And think about, I just want to preface this, go back to the Roman times, right? 2000 years ago. Think about all the slavery and stuff that humanity had to deal with, right? Which has held us back in chains from our real progress. And then with all this freedom that we've gotten the past 100 years, plus years, you know, revolutions, the French Revolution, American Revolution, we finally got to a point where we got some kind of freedom, and so much has happened in a short period of time. But let's strip all that out and everybody's free now. How fast can we accelerate in 5 years?
Yeah, it's to me, it's like, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but like there's be some version of that happens, because the alternative is what we're living, and it's going to get, and I am like the person that his glass is overflowing. So I'm never the pessimist. I'm never the glass half full, but this is just an absolutely scary world to be in right now. And it's going to continue to get worse and worse and worse, because what's being taken is freedom, really from regardless of political beliefs. Like that's just what's being taken away. So if there's not a version of what you just said that happens, this world leads to the most severe war and hate and pain and suffering. So the alternative to that is the exact opposite. It's a place of harmony. It's a place of respect. It's a place of growth. Doesn't mean everybody has to agree, but it doesn't mean that they have to fight over it either. But the problem right now is that the story gets so warped that it just leads to fighting. But that's part of stealing freedom, because when the media warps the story or the government warps the story, they have everybody holding on to their neck. Like it's a disgusting thing it's evolved into. So yeah, so I'm all for it. I don't know if it'll ever become to that extreme, but like it has to move in that direction. Like it's inevitable. So for me, what do I do? Like I don't talk about it, I do something about it, because I believe, and I know this, that our ecosystem, which is a microcosm of the world, will be exactly what you just said.
Well, what would happen in 5 years? I'm sorry to interrupt you. What would, can you paint a picture, like in 30 seconds or less? What would this world look like? We're giving you the assumption that,
yeah, the economy is now moving in the right direction. People are enjoying spending time together once again. The world of judgment has disintegrated. There isn't battling over lack of visibility. Like so much of the battle today is over the lack of visibility. Like people are fighting over things. But what's truth? What's actually real? So they're fighting over like their opinion of what they think is real, but what's actually real. So it's harmonious. It's exciting. It's invigorating. It's energetic. It's a very positive place to be, and it is what the world needs to evolve into. I don't believe it will, which is why I've created my own ecosystem, because in our world, that's present. And the moment that it's not, whoever's causing it is eliminated. Like there's not a second chance there. It's like you've come to play harmoniously, or you're going to go to the rest of the world and you can battle out there, but we're not battling in here.
That's a brilliant response, Jared. Now, Jared, we have to be honest about like the challenges of if certain scenarios. Technology definitely always comes with dangers, right? So, you know, if we got our wish and technology really, we got all this technology to work for us, we're going through a bottleneck right now in history, where there's so much challenges happening at one point in time. We're just trying to push through. So my next question for you is, what are the challenges of humanity if we advance in technology at exponential speeds? Now, I want to preface this. I'll ask the question again. We've gotten so much technology in such a short period of time, and there's laws on this. People say that it doubles every 18 months or something like that, right? If it keeps doubling, and this is the math guy in me, and as I gave you that example, if you doubled a penny every day, 30 days from now, you go from a penny to 10 million, 11 million, 31 days. How much that would happen with technology is the same exact thing. If we have one invention, we start with writing this pen, a pen. We got a pen, right? We invented the pen, we invented the book, and we went from that to inventing, a phone. And if everyone in the world was inventing things, we had all these entrepreneurs out there, and the limits of government were out of the window. We can go from 18 months to a second.
Yeah.
Right. Like there could be extreme dangers at that. I mean, can you speak to we got to look at both sides, right? We got the good side. What are the challenges?
The dangers is for those that want to play it safe, for those that are afraid and they just live status quo, for those that aren't embracing innovation. they just get eliminated. I don't mean like they're killed. Like they have no role. It's like, it's already happening though. Like people that are complaining about what technology is doing in industry where it's replacing jobs, right? It's not just, it's also causing jobs too, because there's people that are creating the technology. So it's either you're going to be the disruptor or the disrupted. That's just what it comes down. That's just what the world is. So now what does that mean for the disrupted? It means take 100% responsibility to improve your value in the world. Like, which means go study, go learn new things, immerse yourself into personal and professional development, like find a way to always have the edge. And that's like a decision that you make. And imagine if there was just a new standard, because right now we have such low standards. Think about how many people lost their jobs and they don't even want to get a job because their unemployment is more money than what they're actually getting paid. Like they're just taking up space. Like that's crazy. Like they're consumers, they're not producers. Like, so what happens is that the world will reward the producers. And unfortunately, the consumers will be impacted, but the consumers have a choice to become producers. They're just not putting in the time to become the producer. So it's not that I'm unempathetic to it, because I know there's like circumstances like disability and things like that, but there'll always be like solutions for those that really can't. But for those that are just like lazy, they're looking for free lunch, like, yeah, you're going to suffer. Like, and not that I think you should suffer. I don't think anybody should suffer. It's just inevitable, because you can also make the choice to be a producer. And when you choose to produce, you then benefit as a producer. And that's really where everybody needs to move towards.
Yeah, and Jared, some parts of this is really an old argument too. Like this is not new. Like for example, the steamboat, replacing the carts, horses being replaced, the steamboats being replaced, railroads replacing certain technology. That was going back to the industrial age, the 1800s. Some people got left off, but they had to figure out how to get into the new, faster transportation industry, right? So we're just here, taking this argument to the next level in 2022. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate that. All right, Jared, we have a series of template questions, and we'll wrap it up. Figure about 30 seconds each. Just want to make sure you're okay with that.
Oh yeah, yeah, over. Yeah, this is fun.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. You did great, man, so far. So can one book change the world? 20, 30 seconds.
No, the execution around what somebody does based on the book or the course will change the world, not the book itself.
Thank you, Jared. What role has networking played in your life?
Everything. Relationship capital is the single most important capital that everybody has the ability to cause.
Thank you, Jared. Jared, is mentoring important, and who are some of your mentors?
Yeah, mentoring is very important. My mentors are, it's so interesting because I say that, but then I'm a contradiction to it, because I don't really know if I have many mentors. I'm so insulated with how I operate and what I listen to and read. And like, I can't even say I am a mentor or any mentors at the same time. I have a lot of people. My kids are my mentors. Like my wife, Mike C-Roc, is a major mentor to me, but like for all different purposes. But everybody needs to have people that bring wisdom in domains, or they shine a light on areas for improvement. And you have to be willing to listen and to act based on what you learn.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Jared. Like a lot of people I bring on here, and in the self-help space, there was like, get a mentor. And I have a mentor, Sharon Lecter, co-author Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm one of her students. And, I gravitate for the top. But the reality is everybody can teach you something. I believe a 3-year-old can teach you stuff. A bird outside, on the wire can teach you something, like if you pay attention to nature can teach from all different levels. So
yeah.
I agree with you, Jared. All right. Thank you, Jared. I'm sorry, what are your favorite financial books? I don't know if you even read financial books, but business, money, we'll put them all together, investing books.
Yeah. I listen more than I read. I mean, like the common ones that everybody talks about, like Think and Grow Rich. And I think Tony Robbins done a good job recently with his delving into finance as a whole. Now I've started to listen to Grant's books. I didn't before, but now that I'm working closer with him, I've listened to that. I think that's interesting. Yeah, just kind of the same ones everybody else does. I also think a lot. I work out with no headphones in. I just think, and that's where my energy and creativity derives from. So I definitely am not the most, I'm going to say, immersed into personal and professional development this chapter in my life. Like I really was when I was younger. Not that much now. To me, it's more of I'm thinking, I'm observing, I'm exposed to so much because we're doing so much. That is become my personal professional development right now. I'm sure I'll go back into it, but this moment, the past few years, have been really into me. which has served me for what we're doing.
Yeah, I love it, Jared. Jared, we didn't talk much about your fitness. So you really are passionate about fitness, huh?
Yes.
Have
Yeah.
been since a kid.
Yeah. I don't know if I've missed 3 workouts in, I don't even know how many years, 20 years. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm very, very passionate about it. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Jared, I want to connect you to somebody offline. So I
Cool.
think you'll really appreciate that. I'm tapped in with a lot of fitness personalities. So,
Awesome.
all right. Do we need money to survive? 30 seconds.
I don't know about to survive. Yeah, to survive, but to thrive, yeah. I think everybody should become motivated by money. Not the only motivation, but they should be motivated to create more, produce more, to make more money, which creates more freedom for themselves.
Thank you, Jared. Is finance necessary for everyone? Now, finance, I'm talking about the science of finance, not like it's commonly thought of as funding. That's a different word. It's funding. I'm talking about like the actual science of finance. Is it necessary?
Yeah, I mean, financial literacy is so important. So it's something that the education system has not done a great job of. There are some great leaders out there that are attempting to, which is awesome. We're doing some interesting stuff with tech in the space as well, but we need to find a way to improve financial literacy as a whole.
Jared, and we can definitely have another discussion with this. So, having Sharon as my mentor, one of my missions is to eradicate financial illiteracy. So maybe we can talk about this, figuring out a way to do just that, because I think it's extremely important. I built my whole life around that. So there's so many people out there that really need to learn about money, and maybe we can combine technology with that to get that message out. Any thoughts?
Yeah, awesome. Love it. Yeah. The only way to truly get a message out is leveraging technology. So if the outcome is, let's increase financial literacy by 17% across the world, the only way to do that is leveraging technology. So yeah, I'd love to explore that deeper with you.
Thank you, Jared. All right, Jared, we're almost there. Just a few more questions left. How important is having a purpose in business, and what is your purpose?
Yeah, so we actually, we have this whole exercise, because we realize we have 150 companies. So every company does these exercises. So for us, we actually call it our code. Some companies would call it values. For us, it's our code. It's one word, which is together. And that word is an acronym, and every letter has a different meaning. So the reason we have this is it creates a common communication between every single party that's involved in Product 10K. From our co-founders to investors to our team, like everybody communicates through our code, and then it leads to efficient outcomes across the board. So every business needs, whether you call it purpose, values, code, it's absolutely critical as a mechanism to unite and for people to communicate through.
And what is your purpose? If you said it in one sentence, what would it be? My purpose is
freedom. So when I was 20 years old, I started reflecting on my childhood, and I realized, talking about my parents' divorce, that was missing for me. And I had a point when I was 20 where I realized that I can start making decisions today that enable me to have a lifestyle with my children that I did not have as a child. And my fanatical focus became freedom. My purpose is to cause freedom for myself, my family, and every single other person I could touch on planet Earth. And that's what we're doing. And I don't know a better way to do it than by launching tech companies, which is why that's what I'm doing.
That's brilliant, Jared. And I commend your mission. Definitely. I agree. By the way, I get your mission 100%. I got it the first day, and I just want to make sure you were the right guy. And after this interview, I'm like, yeah, he's the guy. So thank you, Jared. All right. 2 more questions. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so? Why?
Build, scale, sell 10,000 tech companies in 10 years. That's it. Fanatical focus. But I will never compromise the stuff that truly matters to me. So being a dad, being a husband, my health, that's everything. The only thing that stops me in this journey is if any of those things require me to stop. So as much as that's important, those other things are more important for me. But that's it. Fanatical focus, one outcome, build, scale, sell 10,000 tech companies in 10 years, democratize and decentralize technology.
You think you got room to do anything else?
Yeah, keep on adding those. So that's an interesting question. So I'm an and, not an or person, and I'll continue to add and add and add as long as it makes the main thing easier. So we're opening 1,000 physical hubs, and people are like, you don't stop. I'm like, no, that makes the main thing easier. Like that's it. That makes the main thing easier. Like we launched this opportunity called 100 Change Makers. It gives 100 qualified people a chance to invest $100,000 each into Product 10K, be a shareholder of the company. So it is an investment round, but it's really, it's way more than that. So like that by itself, like I know people that host masterminds that are for 100 people at $100,000, and that's all that they do. And like, this is just a thing that we're doing. And that thing is making the main thing easier. Like we're launching Product 10K Capital, which is our own debt and equity fund. Like that's what people just do. Like that's like that. Like they just run hedge funds and they run venture capital funds. We'll have a multi-billion-dollar fund in the next few years, but it makes the main thing easier. We launched Product 10K Exit. It's our business brokerage, and it's its own entity. Like there are companies that's all that they do is broker deals. That's one thing that we have inside of our ecosystem to make the main thing easier. So I'm an and I'll keep adding. We're going to launch Product 10K PR, Product 10K Media. Like we'll keep on launching because every one of those things makes the main thing easier. But I have one main thing, which is to build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies in 10 years.
Those, by the way, those you're going to have them in every major city. Like what would it be like inside the?
Not major cities, tier 3, 4, and 5 cities. Bend, Oregon, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Skokie, Illinois. Not major cities, because the major cities think they have tech infrastructure. They don't. I don't want to convince them though. But Bend, Oregon knows they don't. And Bend, Oregon has very smart people. There's a lot of wealth out there and there's a lot of tech ideas. There's no infrastructure. So we're bringing our infrastructure to tier 3, 4, and 5 cities.
So what do? You walk in the place and you can actually be greeted by someone that works there. And if you have an idea, you just.
Yeah, physical space. Yeah, we're staffing them. It's a licensing play. We're not going to own the real estate initially because it just is unnecessary. Yeah, it's a tech hub. It's a tech ecosystem. All companies that we co-found through that local hub will work there as a co-working space, but it's not a co-working space. It's a place for everybody part of Project 10K in Bend, Oregon, or whatever city that we're in, are able to work in. That's where the validation challenges take place. The way you work with us is you qualified to start the validation challenge with us, which is a 60-day experience to go from idea to launch. Highly intensive, extremely effective. Within 60 days, we have a minimum viable product that we can bring to market together and start cash flowing, collecting data, proving that there's product market fit. Once we do that, investors throw cash at you. So that's going to happen literally locally. We validate locally and then we scale globally.
Jared, I mean, your company in itself is unique. Now you're adding this extra component. I mean, that's really different. I like it a lot. It's just it's so different. Like I can't even think of any other tech companies that have a company like this where you can just walk in and just start talking about you know something like this. I mean, this is just so different. There's just really not much to compare it to.
There's a new standard, and it's a complete standard, but it's the way it has to be done. This is how entrepreneurship is meant to be done. So we are redefining it. Entrepreneurship is defined as a lonely, arduous, painful, scary journey. And we're like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it doesn't have to be bad. Like, why do so many people that are in entrepreneurship commit suicide? Because it's a lonely, painful, scary journey. But if they were part of an ecosystem, doesn't mean it's easy. It's still hard work, but they're not alone. Like they're not alone anymore. So this solves a lot. I mean, we could talk for days about the impact this causes. It's the reason why, like I talk about this like with our founders all the time. Like everyone should want us to win. And if there's someone in the world that doesn't want us to win, that's their problem. That's not our problem. That means that they got issues. You got to figure out your issues. Because like when we win, it changes everything. Like everything, like economic impact, jobs, internships, countries. I mean, and it's not when Jared wins. Like this is a major distinction. Like a lot of the thought leaders, like their companies are like when that company wins, they win. Like that's just how it works. This is not a Jared thing. It's a project. There's a lot of people involved in this project. There's a lot of people that have skin in the game in this project. So when the project wins, the world wins. It's not a Jared thing. Like I just happen to be the catalyst to get this in motion, but now it's a project. It's way bigger than me. It's way more than me. Product 10K Exit, we have a co-founder that's running that. Product 10K Capital, co-founder that's running that. Product 10K Hub, the licensing arm, where we'll have a physical business, physical locations. We have a co-founder that runs that. And then every one of those hubs is owned by a group of people that run the local hub. So we're just the catalyst to cause this because we built unmatched infrastructure. But when the project wins, the world wins. And anyone that's like, we want that dude to lose, that's a you issue. That's not an us issue, because everyone should want this to win. And everybody should try to find a way to make it easier for it to win because the impact is so extraordinary.
Jared, I just want to pause, if you don't mind for a second. We're in circles with highly selective, successful entrepreneurs. So in our circles, we get this, but 90+% of the world are regular people who hate change. So how do you address that? You're going to change so much, but majority of people on this planet, they don't like to change so fast. We just saw that in the past 2 years.
Resistance is futile though, because it's going to happen whether or not they like it or not. Right? Like that's the thing. It's like you're either going to go with it, you're going to be the disruptor or the disrupted. And that's why it goes back to that point. We will impact billions of lives and we will ruffle the feathers of thousands of people. And I'm okay with it. And not that I never said ruin the lives of thousands of people. I said ruffle the feathers of thousands of people. It's just inevitable. Like there will be people in Silicon Valley that absolutely detest me. Like I know it. Like I know it because we're just shaking it up. There'll be people in the venture space that can't stand me. There are going to be some people that we co-found companies with, and then we realize they're not the right person, and it's going to be a divorce. And they're going to absolutely hope that I fail. They're going to hope, they're going to pray that I fail. They're going to go out of their way to try to make me fail. But I get it. That's what this is. It's a project. It's bigger than a human. Our intent is pure. Our intent is always pure. And our intent is going to produce the outcome. But I know, it's already happened. I know there are naysayers. They're like, I'm just waiting for that dude to take the wrong step. Like, I know it. That's a them problem. I'm not thinking about them. I'm thinking about the billions we're going to serve. But if they have those feelings towards me, figure out you, because that means you're just an angry human. That means there's something that you're dealing with and you're just throwing it on me or throwing it on the project. Like, figure that out or you're going to die miserable. But resistance is futile. This is happening the same way that when I sat down with Grant, he knew this was happening with or without him, and he couldn't do it without me. That's the reality for the freaking world. Like that's what is in the world. So resistance is futile. And I encourage everyone, step into the disruptor versus the disrupted. Because if you're the disrupted, you're going to feel like your feathers are all fluffed. That's your fault. You have the choice to step into the disruptor role.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like all the people in the railroad industry when they saw the car was invented and Henry Ford and that whole, phase of life. How many people hated Henry Ford, like, for taking away their jobs. They worked at the railroads and whatnot. And you're going to create a lot of them. So, I mean, there is going to be haters out there. So you got the right philosophy. There's nothing you can do about that as long as you got the positive intention. And
listen, and I also like this is people will be like, oh, this guy's an animal. I don't care, and I care at the same time. So it's like a really interesting place to be. Like we're like tug of war. Like I care about everyone, but at the same time, I care about the outcome because I know that the outcome is what produces the most significant impact. So for like the two founders that we had a peaceful divorce, maybe it's not peaceful. Never mind. I mean, I think it was peaceful, but maybe they're like, oh my gosh, I pray that he fails. Because if he fails, it's to make me feel better about myself. I know something, I don't really care. And if they listen to this, I'm sorry. I don't really care. I didn't intend to. Like we went in hoping that it was going to work out wonderfully. But luckily we figured out that it wasn't the right fit. Versus it being like that 40-year marriage we were talking about. Where like, oh man, we just compromised 40 years of our freaking love affair for this bland rice cake of a relationship. Like it just wasn't right. It sucks. Like it sucks. Move on, because I moved on. Like now it's your chance to move on too. So I get it. I'm also very, very in tune emotionally with how people feel. And I go out of my way to ensure that they're always going to end up in a better place than they started. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And you just have to choose. You can like stay on the ground and be dirty and dusty, or you get yourself up, you dust yourself off, you learn from it, and you say it happened for me, not to me, and let it serve you. Like I hope that the thousands of feathers that we ruffle, because that happens, they're like, that happened for me, not to me. And because Project 10K ruffled my feathers, I accomplished more in my life. Like I want us to be the Miss Haid for those feather people that were ruffled. Like, because Miss Haid for me served me. Like she served me. The same way that those that are ruffled, I want Project 10K to serve them and let them be extra motivated to do something bigger because they're so ruffled by what we've done.
That's a brilliant response, Jared. Appreciate you. Appreciate you going the extra mile to explain that because, it's an obstacle when you're going for the top. I mean, to be at the top, this is part of the process, breaking glass ceiling. So thank you, Jared. Last question. What would you like to be your legacy to this world? Maybe 30 seconds.
So I talk about this concept often.
And we're going to, sorry to interrupt you. We're going to review this in 20 years.
Yeah, often. So I'm actually going to read this to you, which I don't usually do, but this was like an internal exercise. that we did with the team. So let me pull this up because it is the epitome of it. And usually I just would say it, but we just did this past week. Here, just give me a second. Okay, so I was talking with the team about legacy because I want everybody like this. No, we have no employees at our company. I mean, they're all employees in the sense of how they're compensated. We know employees. Like we tell them, you come here and you can turn this into whatever you want to turn it into. There is no glass ceiling. There is no ceiling. If you plateau, that's a you thing, not an us thing, because you chose to plateau, because we're never going to hold you back. So within that context, we talk often about what your legacy will be because of this and because of just who you are. So for me, it's the man who helped other people accomplish more than they ever deemed possible, while he himself accomplished the impossible that no one ever knew. And what I mean by that is I have zero ego in the story of Product 10K, like zilch, nada. It's why the dynamic between like Grant and I, or Dave Meltzer and I, or Kevin Harrington, it's a really interesting dynamic because they do have a lot more of that. Doesn't make them wrong, but like their businesses are named after them. That's just the most obvious, right? Like I have no attachment to being the hero at Product 10K, zero. Like I actually can't wait to be replaced at Product 10K because that means we really did it. Like we really did it when I'm replaced.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It'll be on the tombstone, and it's going to lead to this seismic ripple effect of little Johnny seeing his mom become a successful tech founder, of that little boy or girl born in the Dominican Republic who was told to become immensely valuable so you can get opportunity outside of the DR. Now they can stay in the DR. It's for the 11-year-old that has an idea and their teachers actually think that they're ADD because they can't sit in the classroom, but they're not. They're an entrepreneur at 11 and they have now the home where we can co-found a company with them. That's what it looks like for me.
That's incredible, Jared. I love it. All right, Jared, we're going to conclude. I want to thank you for being here. I'm so honored to have you here, man. Like this is an incredible interview. A lot of it was just we deep dived in a lot of thoughts, and we went into technology. I mean, you're leading the force of technology. You're going to be the face of the future of technology. I just want to say something real quick. I don't know if you ever read Think and Grow Rich, but I'm part of a series of books called 13 Steps to Riches, and each one of those steps is a book. The 13 Steps to Riches was what Napoleon Hill put in his original book, 13 Steps to Riches. So we dissect every step. And one of the things that Napoleon Hill said, which I thought was incredible, he was talking about he was talking about the steel industry and how many of the original founders, especially like Andrew Carnegie and many of the others associated with him, they were surrounded by people they didn't really know much about steel. Right? They didn't know much about steel, but they created some of the biggest, the Rockefellers, they created some of the biggest industries of steel and railroad. And you said you didn't know much about technology, but you know what they knew, which made them successful. Everything you don't know, you just surround yourself with people that fill that gap. And that's what can make you the next Rockefeller in the technology world, the next Andrew Carnegie, because you know how to be the guy that puts it all, assemble that mastermind team of people that know the things that you don't know. And I see that as a skill set that you have.
Hey, I appreciate that. And that's a wonderful, bold statement. So thank you for that. And I also know it too. So I'm humble, but I do know that about myself. It's my ability to sell a vision and then to execute on that vision. So for anyone out there that feels like they can't garner the support around their big idea, the actual fundamental issue that you're facing is that you have not found a way to articulate that vision enough so that people see that vision as a reality. And you have to work on your ability to communicate the vision so that it's no longer a vision, it's a reality, but it's still a vision. So I've been able to garner the support of crazy people, like nuts, like how did you get their attention? Because I sell the vision so well that it's so crystal clear that they can then see themselves co-creating that. And then I'm executing with reckless abandon, like nonstop execution. So anyone can do that. I don't want it to be like, oh, Jared has like this incredible, unique ability, like maybe to some degree, but not fully. Like I have been fanatical about communication forever, like forever. I'm motivated by what takes somebody who's like in a curtain situation and they hear something and they take action based on that. Like there was something that was said that motivated that action. You can do that for yourself. You have to learn how to sell that vision as if it's reality today.
Thank you, Jared. Jared, before we close, any last remaining thoughts, whatnot that you want to talk about, your website, where to find you more? The floor is yours, Jared. You can say anything you want.
Listen, I want to invite everybody right now. And first thing, Tony, you rock, bro. This was so much fun. I've never gone this deep in a podcast, literally ever. And I've been on hundreds and hundreds of podcasts. So thank you. Thank you for this honor and this friendship. For everybody that's here, I want to challenge you right now. And the challenge is this: accept the challenge. Just say yes from the start. I know that you have a tech idea that's written on a napkin. And if you don't yet, what I ask you to do and challenge you to do is start looking at your personal life and your professional life and start to identify what's stealing your time, your money, or both. And then write that on a piece of paper. And then head over right now to project10k.com/validate and just fill out the application. Fill out the application so that you can start the process with us, so that maybe, just maybe, you become one of the 10,000 entrepreneurs that we co-found a tech company with. And we go on a journey to build it, to scale it, and to sell it together. Tony, it's my honor to be here. Thank you again for this opportunity. It's project10k.com/validate. And I cannot wait to see your napkin idea. Let's rock and roll.
Thank you, Jared. And where can they find you on social media? You're on LinkedIn, Twitter, where
everywhere. Same handle, Jared Yellin. You can find me everywhere. Jared Yellin. Yep.
Okay, and we're going to look forward to Jared's book coming out in about 60 days.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate you again, man. And we're going to conclude now. So, Jared, if you could just wait for me in the green room as soon as it's over, we'll just I'll walk you out. Folks, you've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast here. Definitely check it out. We got the website, drfinance.info. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. Confirm the free newsletters on the drfinance.info. Subscribe to that and confirm that as well. Follow, like, and subscribe to this podcast no matter where you're looking at. But if you go on the website, I got a podcast section where Jared and this interview will also be posted, so you can check it out there as well. It's also going to be boosted out to 20 plus podcast directories all across the board, all the major ones. Also, while you're at it, folks, don't forget to look at my 3 staple books. I'm involved with a 13 series book that I just mentioned, but this is my books that I authored. Becoming a university professor 10 plus years ago. My first book, The Necessity of Finance, I wrote for my finance students. So check that out. It really starts to talk about technology. It really highlighted and shows the technology for the science of finance and economics as it applies to the world. It created new ways and revolutionized the ways of looking at that, which led to my second book, The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance, and then The Survival of the Richest, which was my last book that really expanded on all the conclusions, 500 plus page book, marrying survival, finance, economics, biology, and the world. And Jared, that's where we tie in with the conclusions I came with that last book. I actually look at technology as the last improvement of your wealth. So Jared, we're connected a lot more ways than you think. Finance is an extension of survival. That's the way I teach it. And technology ties in, because if you look at my definition of finance, technology is the last improvement of wealth. That's why it's important for finance, because you're managing wealth. You're managing this technology, right? So I want to thank everyone for being here. If you want to learn more, definitely check it out. Check out Jared at his sites and also the website he mentioned. We're going to see you guys on the next episode. And if you're interested, Clubhouse, we got a date lined up. Check out the Finance Club. Jared's coming to Clubhouse very short. We're going to have a great night there as well. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.